Chapter 2584. Great Rivers and Mountains. Boom, boom, boom. Thunderous rumbles resounded as the huge Mountain River Hall completely collapsed. Around the ruins of the Mountain River Hall, 99 huge mountains stood. The strange thing was that from the foot of each mountain to the top, there was a long river of green water that circled round after round. You forced me to use the great rivers and mountains that the Mountain River Hall has accumulated for countless years. Don't even think about leaving the Mountain River Hall today. Die here. Su Liang, who was nailed to the ground by the purple longsword, laughed as the purple longsword that pierced through his chest collapsed. Su Liang leaped up and his entire body seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis. His aura was as vast as the ocean. Zhuan frowned slightly as he looked at Su Liang, whose aura was getting stronger and stronger. His gaze fell on the surrounding 99 mountains and rivers. In his perception, Su Liang's soaring aura all came from the 99 mountains and rivers. At the same time, the moment the great rivers and mountains appeared, the gravity here increased by thousands of times. It was as if countless mountains were crushing down. Zhuan's body swayed and his face turned slightly pale. Plop, plop, plop. The other spectating cultivators who had retreated to the edge of the square were even worse off. Under the heavy pressure, all of them knelt on the ground and barely supported their bodies. How terrifying! Purple Star Monarch was in a better state. He knelt on one knee and looked at Su Liang, who was surrounded by the 99 mountains and rivers, in horror. Ancestor Su, this has nothing to do with us. Don't drag us into this. Let us leave this place first. That's right, Ancestor Su. We are only here to participate in the 100 Halls auction. Let us leave. Naturally, there were many hall masters present. However, their strength was much weaker than Su Liang's. At this moment, after Su Liang activated the great rivers and mountains, they were all kneeling on the ground and could not resist at all. Su Liang looked coldly at the cultivators who were talking and did not pay attention to them. After seeing how strong Zhuan was, he was now a lot more cautious. Now that he had activated the great mountains and rivers, how could he make an exit for these people? If he really did that, given Zhuan's strength, he would probably be able to leave this great mountain and river as soon as possible. Su Liang said indifferently, "After I annihilate this kid, I'll naturally release all of you. So before I annihilate this kid, I hope that all of you can silently endure it." The moment Su Liang's words came out, the other people all cursed in their hearts, but they didn't dare to refute in the slightest. Their lives were already in Su Liang's hands. If they cursed Su Liang at this moment, wouldn't they be seeking their own deaths? Many of them were praying that Su Liang would kill Zhuan as soon as possible. That way, they wouldn't have to stay in this terrifying chain formation. Zhuan silently looked at the sky, only to see Su Liang floating in the middle of the 99 mountains and rivers. Then, the 99 mountains and rivers actually surged out one after another, all of them converging into Su Liang's body. That's Mountain Soul? Zhuan's eyes narrowed. He looked at the images of the mountains and rivers that rushed out from the mountains and rivers. He couldn't help but guess that these images should be the Mountain Soul. Relying on the Mountain Soul, Zhuan discovered that Su Liang's aura was constantly rising, and the power in his body was also becoming stronger and stronger. Moreover, this energy was neither the power of the three extremes nor divine power. Instead, it was a real power that was as heavy as Mount Tai. Zhuan's brows knit together slightly as his hands suddenly grabbed at the air, and two violet swords that flowed with violet light condensed into form. After that, he suddenly swung them, causing the two violet swords to tear through the sky and instantly arrive before Su Liang. Bang bang! Su Liang's eyes widened. He clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it forward. This fist contained unparalleled power. It was heavy as if it were light. The wind from the fist whistled, forming a transparent fist aura on the surface of the fist. It actually smashed the two purple swords into dust with a single punch. His strength has indeed increased by a lot. Zhuan couldn't help but frown when he saw Su Liang easily smash the purple swords formed from Dao intent. If Su Liang's strength was said to be at the peak of the two extremes of life and death before, then this guy's strength was now comparable to a half-step heavenly Tao master by relying on the power of the mountains and rivers. Although Zhuon had fought the half-step heavenly Tao master Black Smoke King, the main force at that time was Bloodscale, and he had only assisted Bloodscale from the side. Only then did they finally kill the Black Smoke King. Currently, Su Liang's strength was no weaker than the Black Smoke King. However, because the Black Smoke King had an abnormal innate ability, Su Liang was a little easier to deal with. Even so, it was still a little difficult to fight the current Su Liang with just the strength of his original body. Of course, if Zhuon used the sacrificial death sword, he could fight Su Liang. However, he knew that he couldn't kill Su Liang. Although the sacrificial death sword had proven its Tao and become a heavenly Tao array divine artifact, the strength of Zhuowen's original body was still too weak. He couldn't unleash the full power of the sacrificial death sword. The strength of his original body, who wielded the sacrificial death sword, was about the same as that of a half-step heavenly Tao master. Is this all you've got? If so, then you can just wait to die. Su Liang looked at Zhuon with disdain. He was full of confidence. The Mountain River Palace was built by countless generations of palace masters of the Mountain River Palace. It was the foundation of the Mountain River Palace. As long as the Mountain River Palace existed, the Mountain River Palace would never fall. Boom! Su Liang stomped on the void, and the sound of air exploding continuously rang out. Su Liang appeared behind Zhuon as if he had teleported. Although Zhuon relied on the purple mist to barely dodge Su Liang's attack, his eyes were full of surprise. Su Liang's current speed was simply beyond his imagination. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have definitely been hit by this punch. With Su Liang's current strength, he probably wouldn't have had it easy. Your reaction isn't bad, but how many of my attacks can you withstand? Su Liang's eyes grew more and more complacent. He even revealed a hint of mockery. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Liang disappeared on the spot again. Waning son of the sea. Zhuon pointed at the void, and a space-time sea appeared around him. A purple sun rose from the end of the sea behind him. Rumble. The moment Su Liang entered the space-time sea, his figure immediately slowed down. Then, Zhuowen's fist suddenly blasted over and directly smashed Su Liang's cheek, sending Su Liang flying. After flying dozens of meters away, Su Liang forcefully stopped his figure. He looked at the purple sun behind Zhuon with surprise and said, "It's actually a space-time ability." But so, what if it's a mere space-time ability? It can't stop me. Su Liang suddenly formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, the 99 mountains and rivers in the sky suddenly fell, crashing into the space-time sea and erecting unscalable mountains. In particular, Su Liang could actually feel the aura of the heavenly Tao within the sacrificial death sword. Furthermore, the aura of the heavenly Tao was extremely dense. Su Liang was definitely not unfamiliar with this aura. It was extremely similar to the Tao aura circulating on the surface of the Tao fruit. This is very likely a divine tool of Tao validation. No wonder this kid is so confident. It turns out that he has the backing of this divine tool of Tao validation. Su Liang thought to himself. His heart was full of fire. Thinking up to there, Su Liang became even more determined to obtain the death sacrifice sword in Zhuowen's hand. So what if it was a divine tool of Tao validation? He was extremely confident in the might of the great mountains and rivers. As long as he killed Zhuon, the divine tool of Tao validation would naturally be his. Zhuon saw the greed in Su Liang's eyes. He knew that Su Liang had probably guessed that the death sacrifice sword in his hand was a divine tool of Tao validation. Most likely, Su Liang had set his sights on the death sacrifice sword in his hand. Mountains and rivers transform. Su Liang formed a seal with both hands. Immediately, the surrounding 99 mountains and rivers merged together, forming a stone giant. Su Liang merged with the stone giant's chest, becoming the stone giant's core. The stone giant roared furiously. Its huge stone arm whistled through the air and viciously slammed toward Zhuon. Zhuon held the sword in his right hand. His gaze was solemn as he slashed out. Instantly, sword chi filled with the aura of death soared into the sky. Although the sword chi was terrifying, It actually collapsed under the stone giant's arm. Then, the stone giant's arm continued to crush downwards. Zhuowen's body was surrounded by purple mist. He narrowly dodged the stone giant's attack. He leaped up and slashed out with the death sacrifice sword again. It slammed into the stone giant's chest, creating a hole that was dozens of feet wide. The hole was indeed large, but compared to the stone giant's huge body, it was not worth mentioning. However, the stone giant seemed to be self-healing. The stone giant's chest actually wriggled and completely healed. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. Not only was the stone giant's body terrifying, but its self-healing ability was also terrifying. It was simply a humanoid machine. The terrifying sound of something breaking through the air rang in Zhuowen's ears. Zhuowen raised the death sacrifice sword and blocked in front of him. Then he was sent flying. He barely managed to stabilize himself several thousand meters away. It turned out that the sound of something breaking through the air was the stone giant's other arm. Bang, bang, bang. The stone giant swept over again. Zhuowen met it head-on. Then, the two immediately engaged in a fierce battle. Although the power of Zhuowen's death sacrifice sword was terrifying, the stone giant was not weak either. The two were basically evenly matched. At the foot of the mountain river hall, a figure slowly approached. It was a black-clothed youth with an ordinary appearance. He looked exactly the same as Zhuowen's original body. On his shoulders stood a fiery red goo worm the size of a thumb. Ancestor Mountain River, I underestimated this old fellow's strength. He actually used the Mountain River Hall to raise his strength to the level of a half-step Heavenly Tao Master. Although his original body's strength has increased rapidly, it is at most on par with a half-step Heavenly Tao Master. It will be difficult to kill him. The black-clothed youth's pitch-black eyes looked at the huge stone giant above the Mountain River Hall. He also looked at the white-clothed youth who was constantly darting around the stone giant. The killing intent in his eyes was like a monstrous tsunami. After saying that, the black-clothed youth stomped his foot on the ground. Immediately, the entire ground rumbled. The black-clothed youth shot up into the sky like a cannonball and swept towards the top of the mountain. At this moment, the Mountain River Hall was already in ruins. Only the battle between Ancestor Mountain River and Zhuowen remained. The cultivators who were hiding at the edge were all trembling with fear, afraid that they would be affected. They knew very well that if Ancestor Mountain River did not break the restriction around the Mountain River Hall or was defeated, they would not be able to leave this place. Lan Ji hid behind Purple Star Sovereign. His whole body trembled. He could not help but ask Purple Star Sovereign with a trembling voice, "Lord Purple Star, do you think Master will win?" Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch narrowed his eyes and sighed. If Brother Zhuo's avatar is here, he should be able to win. But now, his strongest avatar is not here. According to the situation, I can't tell who will win. Lan Ji's pupils shrank. He did not expect Zhuowen to have a clone. According to Purple Star Sovereign, that clone was even stronger than Zhuowen's original body. Chapter 2586. Sorcerer Race's Secret Codex Crack. While everyone was trembling in fear, the energy barrier outside the ruins of the Mountain River Hall, which was formed by the Great Mountain River Array, trembled violently. Then, countless cracks appeared on its surface. What's going on? The barrier formed by the Mountain River Hall cracked? Everyone raised their heads and looked at the cracks on the barrier behind them in confusion. After all, the barrier was formed by the Mountain River Hall. Even if the extreme realm of life and death wanted to break it, it would be difficult to do so. When the barrier finally shattered, a black-clothed young man stepped in. His eyes were as cold as ice that had been frozen for thousands of years. Everyone was stunned when they saw the black-clothed young man. They even forgot that the barrier was broken and that they should escape. They realized that the black-clothed young man's appearance was exactly the same as Zhuowen's. Could it be that the black-clothed young man was related to Zhuowen? He is. Lan Ji also saw the black-clothed young man who broke the barrier and couldn't help but be speechless. He's Zhuowen's doppelganger. He's much stronger than the original body. Purple Star Monarch looked at the black-clothed young man with a complicated expression. He could feel that the black-clothed young man's extreme 3 power was much stronger than his. It was even more terrifying than Su Liang's. Original body. The black-clothed young man's eyes were as sharp as a knife. He immediately saw the two people who had retreated after the stone giant's attack. Among them, Zhuowen's original body was retreating in the direction of the black-clothed young man. The black-clothed young man gently stretched out his right hand. A gentle energy stopped the original body from retreating. The stone giant also stabilized his body. He looked at the black-clothed young man who suddenly appeared behind Jun. His face was exactly the same as Zhuowen's, and his eyes were filled with surprise. "Who are you?" Su Liang asked coldly. The black-clothed young man sneered at Su Liang and said, "I'm also Jun." After saying that, the black-clothed young man stepped into Zhuowen's body. Instantly, Zhuowen's aura reached an unprecedented level. When the original body and the doppelganger fused together, their strength was not as simple as 1 + 1. Instead, it increased exponentially. Zhuowen's eyes shone with an unprecedented brilliance. He took a step forward and rushed towards the stone giant. Su Liang sneered. Although he could feel that Zhuowen's aura had indeed increased a lot after his clone merged with Zhuowen's original body, he still didn't think that Zhuowen would be a match for him. This was because Su Liang was extremely confident in the great mountains and rivers. As long as the venomous worms continued to grow stronger, the cultivator of the three extremes would also become stronger. Logically speaking, the cultivation method of the venomous worms was not suitable for the human race because the venomous worms were very repulsive to the non-sorcerer race. However, there was a type of venomous worm that was not repulsive to all races, and that was the venomous worms of the sorcerer's venomous worms. It was said that the sorcerer's venomous worms were not primitive creatures of the untainted heavenly realm, but appeared later. When the 12 sorcerers' venomous worms appeared in the untainted heavenly realm, they were too powerful and became existences that the untainted heavenly realm respected like gods. The sorcerer tribe was a tribe cultivated by the sorcerer ancestor. Their cultivation method was also passed down by the sorcerer ancestor and belonged to the sorcerer tribe. On the other hand, the venomous insects of the ancestral sorcerer were not restricted by race. As long as one could gain the recognition of the ancestral sorcerer's venomous insects, any race would be able to achieve a state of symbiosis with the venomous insects of the ancestral sorcerer. Of course, other than the shaman tribe, if the other tribes did not want to be devoured by the ancestral wizard goo worm, they had to cultivate extreme energy. Only by reaching the three extremes would they be recognized by the ancestral wizard goo worm. Otherwise, other tribes, including the human tribe, would not have the chance to form a symbiotic relationship with the ancestral wizard goo worm. Even the sorcerer tribe had to fulfill various conditions to obtain the ancestral sorcerer goo worms. Zhuowen finally understood why Su Liang was trying so hard to obtain the Zhurong goo. It turned out that Su Liang knew about the origin of the Zhurong goo. Moreover, he was a master of three extremities. Most likely, he wanted to try to achieve a symbiotic state with the Zhurong goo. As for how to plant the Zhurong goo in one's body, Su Liang remembered that he had once obtained an incomplete secret codex of the sorcerer clan. The codex was kept in Su Liang's cave. Chapter 2587. Saving Wu Shang. At this moment, the ruins of the mountain river hall were silent. The onlookers were petrified as they stared at the white-clothed young man standing in the ruins and Su Liang's body that had been destroyed. They still found it hard to believe that the mountain river hall's patriarch, who was second only to the Grand Pure One in strength, had been killed just like that. Zhuowen ignored the people around him. Instead, he slowly walked in front of Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch and Lan Ji. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes were filled with reverence while Lan Ji's eyes were filled with fear and admiration. The battle just now had completely shocked the two of them. They knew that the battle had gone beyond the scope of the 9 steps of the void sky. "I will occupy the mountain river hall for now. Do you have any objections?" Zhuowen stood in the ruins and looked at the surrounding cultivators. All the cultivators who met Zhuowen's gaze subconsciously lowered their heads. Then, the cultivators cupped their fists at Zhuowen and left the mountain river hall. Even the disciples of the mountain river hall left. Soon, only Zhuowen, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign, and Lan Ji were left in the ruins of the mountain river hall. Crepe Myrtle, Star Sovereign, and Lan Ji looked at Zhuowen's back in reverence. They knew that from today onwards, Zhuowen had established himself in the grand pure immortal realm. The fame of killing Su Liang was enough to make all the forces in the grand pure immortal realm not dare to provoke Zhuowen. After Zhuowen set up several level 9 formations in the ruins of the Mountain River Hall, he casually built a simple cave palace in the ruins. After arranging for Crepe Myrtle, Star Sovereign, and Lan Ji to stay in the cave palace temporarily, Zhuowen left the place. Zhuowen followed Su Liang's memories and quickly found an inconspicuous cave palace near the Mountain River Hall. There were level 9 formations and concealment formations outside Su Liang's cave palace. However, in the eyes of Zhuowen, who was already a level 9 formation master, these formations were as fragile as paper and were all destroyed by him. Su Liang's cave was extremely simple and crude. Apart from a stone table and a stone stool, there was nothing else inside. Zhuowen spread out his divine sense and scanned everything in the cave mansion. Finally, he found something strange in the corner. Zhuowen was inside the earth barrier in a remote corner of the cave. With a flip of his right hand, the earth barrier fell off, revealing a deep cave. In this cave, there were actually 3 jade slips half the size of a palm. After picking up the 3 jade slips, Zhuowen casually glanced through them and noticed that 2 of the jade slips were actually Su Liang's cultivation secret manuals. Such a secret manual was considered top-notch in China's Heaven region, but it was not attractive to Zhuowen. The tyrannical Dao slaughtering technique he cultivated was of a much higher level than Su Liang's secret manual. If it was not a Dao-confirming cultivation method, Zhuowen basically would not be tempted. After all, with Zhuowen's current strength, only things that belonged to Dao-confirming powerhouses were useful to him. As for things below Dao-confirming, they were almost useless to him. The 3rd jade slip aroused Zhuowen's interest. The 3rd jade slip recorded the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe that Su Liang had obtained. However, what was recorded was not the real secret manual of the sorcerer tribe, but the specific information of the sorcerer tribe's secret manual. This old man is really cautious. He actually hid the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe so well. It seems that the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe should be something extraordinary. After reading the jade slip, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a cautious look. According to the jade slip, Su Liang had hidden the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe deep in the mountains and rivers where the Mountain River Hall was located. It was said that in the depths of the underground, there was a peerless ominous vein suppressed. The energy that maintained the operation of the mountains and rivers all came from this ominous vein. Moreover, this ominous vein was extremely huge. Back then, the Mountain River Hall's ancestor had only used a part of the ominous energy of this ominous vein. As for how huge this ominous vein was, even the successive Mountain River Hall masters had not been able to completely explore this ominous vein. They only knew that this ominous vein was huge and terrifying. This ominous vein is not simple. Su Liang has not completely explored this ominous vein. Zhuowen squinted his eyes and revealed a trace of surprise. Although Su Liang's strength was not as strong as his, he was still an expert standing at the peak of the Taiching celestial realm. However, he had not been able to completely explore this ominous vein. This showed that this ominous vein was not ordinary. It seems that I have to go back to the old site of the Mountain River Hall first, Zhuowen said and returned to the ruins of the Mountain River Hall. Both Crepe Star Sovereign and Lan Ji were in the cave mansion. Zhuowen said a few words to the 2 of them and said that he would be in seclusion for a period of time. If there was nothing important, it was best not to disturb him. Crepe Star Sovereign and Lan Ji naturally agreed. After seeing Zhuowen's strength, the 2 of them were even more in awe of Zhuowen. Naturally, they did not dare to disobey Zhuowen's orders. After entering the cave mansion, he completely sealed his room. Then, with a flick of his finger, a white light swept out from the spirit ring. This white light turned into a beautiful figure in white. This was an extremely young woman. However, the strange thing was that this woman's facial features did not seem to exist. She looked like a faceless woman. Looking at the faceless woman floating in front of him, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of guilt. After a moment of silence, Zhuowen said in a low voice, "Wushang, Today I will restore you." After saying that, Yuan took out 6 level 9 divine herbs from the spirit ring. These level 9 divine herbs were the Shangqing Calamity Heart, the Celestial Spirit Crystal, the Origin Golden Essence Flower, the Void Bone Refining Ginseng, the 8 trigrams Byong Water, and the Great Simplicity Double Dragon Ganoderma. These 6 divine herbs could restore Moyan Wushang's 6 lost desires. Speaking of this method, he had seen it on the last page of the wordless alchemy manual that the second elder of the Pill Tower had given him. Thinking of this, Zhuan took out the wordless alchemy manual and flipped to the last page. According to the records on the last page, Yuan began to calcine the 6 divine herbs into medicinal liquid. After calcine the 6 divine herbs into medicinal liquid, Yuan used his powerful divine sense to control the 6 medicinal liquids and fuse them together. In the end, they turned into a strange ink-black liquid. This ink-black liquid was like a black snake, constantly swimming around Zhuan. Finally, under Zhuan's mind, it fiercely drilled into the body of Moyan Wushang, who was floating in front of him. The moment this ink-black liquid entered Moyan Wushang's body, Zhuan could clearly feel that the unconscious Moyan Wushang was trembling slightly. Chapter 2588. The wordless alchemy book. Zhuan's eyes lit up as he paid close attention to Moyan Wushang. He knew that the elixir really had an effect on Moyan Wushang's condition. A month later, Yuan was still by Moyan Wushang's side. However, Zhuan's eyes were getting brighter and brighter. Over the past month, with the help of the black elixir, Moyan Wushang's facial features had gradually recovered. The current Moyan Wushang was almost the same as before, except for the fact that he was still in a coma. "I say, kid, how did you get this alchemy book?" Suddenly, a muffled voice sounded in Zhuan's mind. Zhuan was startled and immediately released the Pill Emperor Turtle. The Pill Emperor Turtle's head was deep in the Pill Emperor furnace. Its little hay eyes were fixed on the wordless alchemy book that Zhuan had casually placed aside. Zhuan looked at the wordless alchemy book and said casually, "The Pill Tower's second elder gave it to me. I heard that it was an alchemy book passed down by the Pill Tower's ancestor. However, this alchemy book is blank. The only record is on the last page. It happened to be about curing the 6 desires, so the Pill Tower's second elder gave it to me." The Pill Emperor Turtle shook its head and said with a nostalgic look, "This alchemy book is not simple. I once heard my master say that he was chased to the 8 heavenly domains in order to obtain this alchemy book. Then he helplessly fell." Zhuan was startled. The Pill Emperor Turtle's master was the Pill Emperor Fire. Zhuan knew this. After all, the divine pill secret realm in the Pill Furnace star field was created by the Pill Emperor Fire. Although he didn't know the exact strength of the Pill Emperor Fire, he knew that the Pill Emperor Fire was definitely a powerful Dao affirmation expert. Moreover, he was a high-level alchemy genius. Such an expert had fallen because of this wordless alchemy book. Could it be that the book's origin was extraordinary? Thinking of this, Zhuan looked at the Pill Emperor Turtle. Although the Pill Emperor Turtle had said that the wordless alchemy book was extraordinary, it was completely blank. There were no words in it. So what if he knew that it was extraordinary? To him, it was still of little value. The Pill Monarch Turtle wanted to say something, but in the end, he said, "Try using the Pill Fire. If I'm not mistaken, the Pill Fire is connected to the wordless pill book. However, I can't guarantee what will happen. After all, I've never tried it before." Zhuan's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he took out his alchemic fire and wrapped it around the wordless alchemic book. Seeing Zhuan burn the wordless pill book with his pill fire, the Pill Emperor Turtle almost cursed it out loud. However, Zhuan didn't care at all. Since the wordless pill scripture was not a mortal scripture, it naturally could not be burned away so easily. Moreover, with Zhuan's personality, this wordless pill scripture would not be of much use to him, so he would not feel any heartache even if it was burned away. Zhuan suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise. He saw that the alchemy fire that was constantly burning was actually absorbed by the wordless alchemy book. In the end, the alchemy fire on the surface of the wordless alchemy book disappeared, and the alchemy book floated in midair. The alchemy fire was absorbed? Zhuan frowned. He reached out with his right hand and pinched the alchemy fire that was floating in midair. He opened it. Seeing that the alchemy book was still empty, Yuan was slightly disappointed. However, when he flipped to the last page of the alchemy book, his eyes suddenly lit up. On the other side of the last page, there was an imprint of a flame. Yuan was no stranger to this flame imprint. It was in the shape of an alchemy fire. Besides the imprint of the alchemy fire, there was also a dense cluster of small words on the page. Yuan carefully looked at the words recorded on the last page. His face revealed a trace of seriousness and excitement. Heavenly Tao Divine Pill Art? Yuan muttered to himself. He read the first line of the title that appeared on the last page. After carefully studying the contents of the last page, Yuan was even more surprised. This so-called Heavenly Tao Divine Pill Art was extremely amazing. From the introduction inside, relying on the alchemy fire to form this alchemy technique could increase the success rate of the Heavenly Tao Divine Pill by 90%. Although Yuan didn't know about the Heavenly Tao Divine Pill, he was a level 9 Divine Array Master. He knew that after the level 9 Divine Array Master was the Heavenly Tao Divine Array Master, whose level corresponded to the Tao Confirmation Realm. Naturally, the level of the array was the same. Back then, Shui Wuhan had set up the Bloodlight Meteor Array in the gap leading to the primitive Heavenly Realm. It was a Heavenly Fate Array, which was much stronger than the Heavenly Tao Array. The level of the alchemist was naturally similar to that of the Divine Array Master. They also started from the Heavenly Tao level. The level of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill refined was naturally the same. The Heavenly Tao Divine Pill was undoubtedly the first level of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill. Of course, although it was only the lowest level of the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill, it was still a Tao Confirmation Divine Pill. In the 8 heavenly realms, there had never been a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill. If there really was one, Yuan guessed that the Tao Confirmation Divine Pill passed down by the ancestors of the Tusida Heavenly Realms Old Lord Tusida should be a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill. Although Yuan didn't know the success rate of an ordinary Heavenly Tao alchemist in refining a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill, he knew that being able to increase the success rate by 90% was definitely a heaven-defying success rate. One had to know that even if a Heavenly Tao-level alchemist was like a pig, concocting a Heavenly Tao-level Divine Pill would basically be a failure. As long as one grasped the Heavenly Tao-level Divine Pill formula in this alchemy manual, they would basically have a 90% success rate. As long as an ordinary Heavenly Tao alchemist knew this pill art, they would definitely be able to refine a Heavenly Tao Divine Pill with a 100% success rate. There was no chance of failure at all. This showed how heaven-defying and terrifying this Heavenly Tao Divine Pill art was. However, Yuan was troubled by the fact that he didn't know any alchemy skills at all. Although he had seen some of the alchemy books that the second elder of the Pill Tower had given him, he had only read a part of them. Moreover, he was extremely pressed for time recently, so he didn't have time to study alchemy. Just as Yuan was distressed about alchemy, a cluster of flames suddenly swept out from the alchemy fire on the last page of the alchemy book. Then, it shot towards the space between Yuan's eyebrows. Yuan's body shook. Then, a huge amount of information appeared in his mind. The content of this information was actually all about alchemy. With the help of this information, Yuan's understanding of alchemy increased imperceptibly. His eyes revealed a bright and penetrating look. Yuan sat cross-legged on the spot for a total of 10 days and 10 nights. Finally, he suddenly opened his eyes. A ray of light that was as bright as the moon pierced through heaven and earth. So that's how it is. So this is what alchemy is all about? Where did this wordless alchemy book come from? Yuan's gaze fell on the wordless alchemy book. He knew that this wave of alchemy didn't come from the alchemy book, but from the alchemy fire. This alchemy fire was D-Alchemy Fire's natal alchemy fire. It contained D-Alchemy Fire's lifelong understanding of alchemy. The alchemy fire had been by his side for a long time, but it didn't pass on any of D-Alchemy Fire's insights when he was alive. However, ever since the alchemy fire was recorded in the wordless alchemy book, it immediately gave him feedback on D-Alchemy Fire's insights when he was alive. He knew that this was all because of the wordless alchemy book. This wordless alchemy book clearly had spirituality. The moment he used the alchemy fire, The wordless alchemy book must have acknowledged him and thanked him in this way. Chapter 2589. Wu Shang was still unconscious. No matter what the reason was, Jun had comprehended the alchemy Dao of the Emperor Pillfire, even though he had yet to refine any Dao-confirming spirit pills. However, with the Emperor Pillfire's comprehension of the alchemy Dao, Jun knew that his alchemy skills should be able to improve very quickly. Once he broke through to become a level 9 alchemist and advanced to a heavenly Dao alchemist, with the wordless alchemy book's alchemy arts, refining heavenly Dao divine pills would be as easy as eating a meal. It seems that I need to find time to improve my array Dao and alchemy Dao. Jun thought to himself. Jun didn't have any confidence in improving his array Dao, but with the Emperor Pillfire's comprehension of the alchemy Dao, Jun knew that it would be much easier for him to improve his alchemy Dao. This was because the Emperor Pillfire was a Heaven's Mandate alchemist. It could be said that it was a powerful second-step Dao-confirming alchemist, an expert who could refine Heaven's Mandate divine pills. With the Emperor Pillfire's comprehension of the alchemy Dao, not to mention a Heaven's Mandate alchemist, even a Heaven's Mandate alchemist, Jun was confident that he could smoothly advance. However, Jun knew that the alchemist profession was an extremely money-burning profession. If he wanted to improve his alchemy Dao, he could only continuously refine divine pills and try to refine higher-grade divine pills. Otherwise, improving his alchemy Dao was simply empty talk. As for the medicinal ingredients of the Dao confirmation divine pill, they were all not ordinary medicinal ingredients. In the 8 great heavenly realms, all of them were priceless. Even in the high-level heavenly realms like the Great Desolate Heavenly Realm and the Xianmi Heavenly Realm, the Dao confirmation divine medicine was a precious breed. If a Dao-confirming alchemist wanted to improve, they naturally needed Dao-confirming spirit pills to refine. Only by refining higher-grade Dao-confirming spirit pills could the alchemist's realm be considered to have improved. Moreover, Jun vaguely felt that the heavenly Dao-grade God pill art in this wordless pill book should only be a small part of the entire pill book. There must be other pill arts in the back, such as the Dao Yuan grade God pill art, the primordial grade God pill art, or even the 3rd step Dao confirming God pill art. As long as he had the pill art, Zhuo knew that he had a lot of advantages over other alchemists. Because he had the pill art, his failure rate was too low. Of course, these were only Zhuo's guesses. Whether or not it was as Zhuo had guessed, he would have to wait for further evidence. Zhuo's gaze landed on Moyan Wushang, who was floating beside him. At this moment, Moyan Wushang had completely recovered his original appearance. His lost facial features had also recovered. His face was no longer expressionless. Instead, it was full of vitality. However, what made Zhuo frown was that Moyan Wushang's eyes were still closed. He had fallen into a state of coma. Logically speaking, after Zhuo used the 6 divine medicines to restore Moyan Wushang's 6 desires, he should be able to wake up. However, things were not going as planned. Moreover, Zhuo also carefully checked Moyan Wushang's body. He found that the latter's physical condition was excellent. His breathing was stable, but he had not woken up. He was like a sleeping beauty. Pill Emperor Turtle, what the hell is going on? Zhuo quickly summoned the Pill Emperor Turtle. He knew that the Pill Emperor Turtle had followed Pill Emperor Fire for many years. It must know more than him. Naturally, it had more experience than him. Although Zhuo had inherited the D Pill Fire's alchemy Dao insights, he had not inherited the D Pill Fire's memories and vast knowledge. There were still many questions regarding the alchemy Dao that Zhuo only knew a little about. Zhuo also knew that experience could not be given to him by others. Only when he experienced it could he have his own experience. After all, other people's experience was still someone else's. When the Pill Emperor Turtle appeared, its black eyes fell on Moyan Wushang's body. It revealed an extremely solemn expression. Kid, the human body has 7 emotions and 6 desires. This little girl's 6 desires have been deprived. This kind of deprivation is not as simple as the physical body. The 6 desires of this little girl's soul have also been deprived. Originally, after the 6 desires of the physical body and soul were deprived, the two formed a delicate balance. This desireless thoughts were also controlled by the one who performed the technique. But now, it seems that the one who controlled the technique has already fallen. You have restored the 6 desires of this girl's physical body. However, the 6 desires of her soul have not been restored. This girl is in an unbalanced state. Therefore, it will be very difficult for her to wake up in a short period of time. The Pill Emperor Turtle's gaze was somewhat complicated. There was a trace of regret in its voice. Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He said somewhat emotionally, "Pill Emperor Turtle, when I restored Wushang's 6 desires, why didn't you tell me earlier?" The Pill Emperor Turtle said helplessly, "Kid, this is the first time I've encountered a situation where the 6 desires have been deprived. As for why this happened, how would I know? Right now, I'm just giving my opinion based on this girl's situation." "Then what should I do? Don't tell me that Wushang will continue to be like a living corpse?" Zhuowen said with a gloomy expression. The Pill Emperor Turtle shook its head and said, "A situation where the 6 desires have been deprived is really too rare. It's useless to ask me. Moreover, regarding the recovery method of the 6 desires, didn't you learn about it from this alchemy book? This alchemy book is badly damaged. I'm afraid that the treatment method is also badly damaged. It's not complete." Zhuan was silent. The Pill Emperor Turtle quietly looked at Zhuan and said, "This wordless alchemy book has a mysterious origin. It's definitely not an ordinary item. Perhaps after you've studied it thoroughly, the other half of the method to restore the 6 desires may appear in this wordless alchemy book. When that time comes, you can save your friend." Yun was still silent, but his eyes shone brightly. He looked at Moyan Wushang, who was floating next to him and breathing steadily. He said in a low voice, "At least Wushang has recovered a lot. Since the root of this method is in this wordless alchemy book, then I'll study it thoroughly. When the time comes, I'll definitely help Wushang recover his 6 desires and let him recover completely." Zhuan made up his mind to study the wordless alchemy book and study the alchemy way. With a sigh, Zhuan took out a large piece of jade from his spirit ring. Then he began to carve the surface of the jade. He looked very serious. Zhuowen spent 3 days carving a large piece of jade into a luxurious jade coffin. Opening the coffin lid, Yuan gently carried Moyan Wushang by the waist and gently placed him into the jade coffin. Hearing Moyan Wushang's steady breathing, Yuan felt even more ashamed. Chapter 2590. SSA Gathering of Experts. When Zhuan removed the restriction array in the room and walked out of the cave abode, he saw Crepe Myrtle Star and Lan Ji standing at the edge of the old site of the Mountain River Hall, looking outside with solemn gazes. "What's wrong?" Zhuan asked subconsciously. "Brother Zhua, look outside and you'll know." Crepe Myrtle Star pointed outside the great array. Zhuan looked through the transparent ripples at the edge of the great array and saw the many cultivators outside the great array. There were many cultivators gathered outside the great array. These cultivators were curiously looking inside the great array as if they were looking for something. Broken Mountain Hall's Hall Master Yu Yu, Azure Sun Hall's Hall Master Wu Hui, Disturbed Love Hall's Hall Master Wu Qing. Heavens, so many Hall Masters have come. Do they plan to besiege us? Lan Ji's face was pale as he trembled. However, Lan Ji calmed down a little when he saw Zhuan arrive. Even so, he couldn't stop his body from trembling and there was a hint of worry in his eyes. Zhuan's strength was terrifying. Even the patriarch of the Mountain River Hall had been killed by Zhuan. However, Lan Ji was still a little worried. Zhuan was alone. Did he really have the strength to fight against so many forces? Outside the array, Lan Ji could already recognize more than 30 Hall Masters. As for the remaining Hall Masters, he couldn't recognize about 40 of them. Apart from the Hall Masters of the Blood Divine Hall and the other 10 Hall Masters who had perished in the Boundless Taishu, most of the Hall Masters of the 100 Halls of the Taiching Immortal Realm had come. In addition to these Hall Masters, Lan Ji also realized that these Hall Masters had sent their own elite experts. Basically, they were all experts above the Void Sky 8th step. There were hundreds of such experts. Most of the peak strength of the Taiching Immortal Realm had gathered here. Crepe Myrtle Star frowned. He hadn't expected the other 100 hall masters of the Taiching immortal realm to attack. Did they not know Zhuowen's strength? Zhuowen's gaze was extremely calm. He looked indifferently at the many experts gathered outside. He saw the same expression in their eyes, greed. He knew very well that although he had killed the Mountain River Hall's ancestor, Su Liyang, he had also obtained the Zhurong-gu that Su Liyang had been longing for. Anyone who wasn't a fool would know that the Zhurong-gu was extraordinary since it could cause such a huge commotion in the boundless Taishu. Coupled with Su Liyang's actions, many people believed that the Zhurong-gu was a precious treasure. Of course, these people's guesses were not wrong. The Zhurong-gu was indeed a precious treasure. However, it was not very useful if it was obtained by someone who had not reached the three extremes. Zhuan naturally wouldn't tell them the truth. Even if he told them the truth, they might not believe him. It seems that I was too merciful. In their eyes, the Mountain River ancestor Su Liyang, who has the power of the Mountain River Hall, is a greater threat than me? The corner of Zhuowen's mouth curled into a mocking smile. Then he took a step forward and walked out of the great array. You must be the Zhuowen who has been the talk of the town recently, right? Your strength is not bad and you were lucky enough to kill Su Liyang. However, you are only a shadow after all. Do you think you can go against the entire Taiching immortal realm alone? A middle-aged man with feminine eyes looked down at Zhuowen arrogantly. The corner of his mouth was full of arrogance, as if he didn't take Zhuowen seriously. My lord, this is the Broken Mountain Hall's hall master, He is ranked in the top 20 among the 100 halls and is very strong. Lan Ji hurriedly introduced him to Zhuowen. You'd better know your place. You are now a turtle in a jar. Don't think that you have a foothold in the Taiching immortal realm just because you killed Su Liyang. Let me tell you, an outsider like you is not qualified to have a foothold in the Taiching immortal realm unless you destroy all the forces in the Taiching immortal realm. The slightly plump man standing not far away from you said with disdain. This person is the Azure Sun Hall's hall master, Wu Hui. Lan Ji said with a trembling voice. Next, these so-called palace masters would belittle Zhuowen in all sorts of ways, their gazes filled with disdain. Every time a hall master spoke, Lan Ji would whisper in Zhuowen's ear and introduce them. Zhuowen did not stop them. He just silently looked at the faces of these Taiching immortal realm hall masters. Are you guys done talking? After a while, although the surrounding voices did not stop, Zhuowen had already opened his mouth to interrupt the hall master's conversation. It seems that you are afraid. As I said, you are only one person. Although you are strong, you can't fight against all of us here. It's good that you know your place. Why don't you quickly hand over the burning insect? The Broken Mountain Hall Master, Yu, looked at Zhuowen with a sneer. His voice was filled with undisguised ridicule. Unfortunately, just as Yu finished speaking, he was slapped hard on the cheek. Then, Yu fell to the ground in midair, creating a huge human-shaped pit. Yu, who was in the pit, twitched all over. His face was swollen beyond recognition, and broken teeth fell out of his mouth. The surroundings immediately quieted down. Everyone looked at Yu, who was lying half dead in the pit. No one had expected that Zhuowen would suddenly attack because of a disagreement. Moreover, they did not expect that Yu would be slapped to the ground. His entire body was twitching and he was half dead. What kind of strength did this require? Even though some of the cultivators were mentally prepared, they were still frightened. Originally, I only came to the Grand Pure Immortal Realm for some matters. The reason why I destroyed the Mountain River Hall was because Su Liyang provoked me. I originally thought that this matter would end with Su Liyang's death, but I didn't expect that you ants would actually belittle yourselves and dare to besiege me. Since that's the case, I won't be merciful anymore. All of you stay here. Zhuowen's voice was cold and emotionless, as if it was 10,000-year-old profound ice. Among this group of people, Zhuowen saw many cultivators who had participated in the 100 Halls auction held by the Mountain River Hall. Originally, after killing Su Liyang, Zhuowen would not pursue the matter any further and would just release all of them. However, he did not expect that these fellows were all ingrates. Not only did they not know how to repay his kindness, they even spread the news and gathered so many hall masters and experts to encircle and annihilate him. Kill! No matter how powerful this Zhuowen is, he is only one person. With hundreds of us here, how could we be afraid of him alone? Right? Kill this person. This person is so strong, he must have a great treasure on him. When the time comes, everyone will split it. After Zhuowen heavily injured Yu with a single slap, the cultivators all roared and rushed out. Under the lead of more than 80 hall masters, they gathered toward Zhuowen like a swarm of locusts. Chapter 2591. 5 Spirit Cloud Space Fruit, We're done for. Lan Ji stood beside Zhuowen. His face was pale and his body was trembling. He almost couldn't stand still. Zhuowen lifted the blue halberd and threw it into the array. Zhuowen's avatar separated from his body, and a ray of golden light burst out from his eyes. As soon as the black-robed Zhuowen appeared, golden light filled the sky. Then, the Devourer King's true body appeared. The dazzling golden Devourer King casually swung his claws. The surrounding space was torn apart. Any cultivator below the 9th step Void Sky realm that was hit by this claw would either die or be injured. The Devourer King swung his giant claws again and again. Golden light rained down like golden rain. Every ray of golden light was able to deal a heavy blow to any cultivator that came in contact with it. The moment the Devourer King unleashed his invincible might, a wisp of gray energy shot out from Zhuowen's forehead. This wisp of gray energy manifested into a divine sword that was filled with the Tao of Death. This sword was the Sacrificial Death Sword, a genuine heavenly Tao divine artifact. As soon as the Sacrificial Death Sword was unleashed, there was basically no obstruction in its path. Not a single cultivator could withstand the might of the Sacrificial Death Sword. Moreover, any cultivator that was pierced by the Sacrificial Death Sword would strangely wither into a dried corpse. They couldn't be more dead. Even the strongest Life Enlightenment Realm cultivators could withstand the Sacrificial Death Sword's first strike. However, when the Sacrificial Death Sword slashed out a second time, the Life Enlightenment Realm cultivator could only let out a cry of unwillingness. He died under the Sacrificial Death Sword and became a departed soul. In less than 10 breaths of time, a third of the several hundred cultivators that came had fallen. As for the rest of the cultivators, they were all trembling in fear. They never thought that Zhuowen's strength would be so terrifying. Generally speaking, a cultivator who was good at fighting alone might not be able to withstand the combined might of so many experts. In the eyes of these cultivators, even if Su Liang were to come in person, he would have to suffer a grievance. However, their current lineup was as weak as tofu in front of this white-robed youth. It was too terrifying. Is he still human? Isn't this even crazier than Honorable Tai Ching? The remaining cultivators were all shocked as they stared blankly at the white-robed young man who was harvesting their lives like a god of death. The only thing they could see now was the white-clothed young man's cold and emotionless eyes. For some reason, they felt a deep chill in their hearts. Some of the more knowledgeable individuals noticed the Sacrificial Death Sword floating beside Zhuowen. They could sense a vast, boundless aura from the Sacrificial Death Sword. Could this be a Tao verification divine artifact? Many cultivators thought so in their hearts, but their expressions were extremely ugly and gloomy. Coupled with Zhuowen's terrifying doppelganger, most of the cultivators began to think of retreating. At this moment, they couldn't help but think that the white-clothed young man in front of them was invincible. Let's run. This person's strength far surpasses ours. It's impossible for us to kill them with numbers. A cultivator sighed. He immediately took out an escape talisman and crushed it, preparing to escape this place. Unfortunately, the moment the cultivator crushed the talisman, the stream of light he turned into only flew a few hundred meters before reappearing. In front of the cultivator, there were waves of ripples, and transparent rings appeared. It was obvious that an extremely powerful barrier had appeared in front of this cultivator, blocking them all. When did you set up the level 9 formation? When this cultivator was stopped by the barrier, his face turned pale and his lips trembled. As for the other cultivators who wanted to escape, their eyes were filled with fear when they realized that this cultivator had been stopped by the level 9 formation. They thought to themselves, "It's over." Zhuowen completely ignored the thoughts of these cultivators who wanted to escape. He leisurely shuttled through the crowd of cultivators. Every time he shuttled through, the sacrificial death sword would bring about a blood-curdling scream and splatter of blood. Almost no one could withstand a single strike from Zhuan. Zhuowen's Devourer King clone was even more terrifying. Every time he swung his giant claws, he could kill more than 10 people. This was even under the condition that these cultivators were dodging. The attacks of these cultivators were like tickles to the Devourer King clone. They had no effect at all. Coupled with the level 9 formation, they couldn't escape or fight. Their hearts were already filled with despair. In less than a quarter of an hour, after Zhuowen killed the last cultivator, the sacrificial death sword turned into a wisp of gray gas and entered his spirit. Meanwhile, the Devourer King clone turned back into the black-robed young man and merged with his original body. In the old site of the Mountain River Hall, Purple Star Monarch and Lan Ji were completely stunned. It wasn't until Zhuowen entered the old site of the Mountain River Hall from the outside world and arrived in front of them that the two of them subconsciously gulped. "This is my communication jade talisman. I have something to do and need to enter the Mountain River Hall to investigate. If there's any emergency, just notify me." Zhuowen handed 2 communication jade talismans to Purple Star Monarch and Lan Ji. After giving them a few more instructions, he entered the depths of the northern part of the Mountain River Hall. According to the introduction in Su Liang's Jade Slip, the entrance to the ominous vein was at the northern edge of the Mountain River Hall. Looking at the departing figure, Purple Star Monarch sighed softly and said, "I'm afraid the entire Grand Clarity Immortal Realm is going to explode into a pot." Lan Ji nodded in agreement and said, "My lord has already established himself in the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm. I don't think there will be any ignorant forces that will come to provoke my lord." Inside the Hall of Virtue, it was cold and cheerless. Aside from the tranquil sandalwood fragrance emitted by the purple gas lingering around, there was no one in sight. A stream of light quietly swept into the Hall of Virtue, revealing a delicate and beautiful figure. Dao rhymes flowed around this beautiful figure, giving her a different kind of charm. It was Lian Meng. As soon as Lian Meng entered the Hall of Virtue, she immediately hurried inside. The interior of the Hall of Virtue was extremely simple and crude. It was like an ordinary ancestral hall, and there was a statue enshrined at the front. This statue was none other than the face of the master of the Hall of Virtue, the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm. Lian Meng knelt on the praying mat in front of the statue, her beautiful eyes staring intently at the statue of the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm. She said softly, "Master, disciple has returned. Although I don't know what happened between you and martial uncles Yu Qing and Shang Qing, I still managed to obtain the ominous vein Immortal Realm. However, I have followed your instructions and brought the 5 Spirit Cloud Void Fruit here. What should I do next?" The hall was terrifyingly quiet. Only Lian Meng's voice kept echoing. Lian Meng faintly felt a trace of uneasiness, especially when she saw the Grand Clarity Immortal Realm's statue in front of her squinting its eyes and staring at her. Suddenly, Lian Meng noticed that the left hand of the statue, which was holding the end of the horsetail whisk, slowly spread out, as if asking her for something. Chapter 2592. Unparalleled ominous vein. The instant the 5 Spirit Cloud Space Fruit landed on the Grand Clear statue's palm, a strand of purple light erupted from the statue's eyes. Then, the 5 Spirit Cloud Space Fruit slowly merged into the Grand Clear statue's palm. Countless strands of purple mist erupted from the surroundings of the Grand Clear statue. Like rolling purple clouds, they instantly dyed the surrounding hall a strange purple. Lian Meng looked at the surroundings with some fear. Then she discovered that the Grand Clear statue was even stranger. The purple light that erupted from its eyes seemed to come from another world. It was extremely terrifying. "Master, is that you?" Although Lian Meng was afraid, she still called out softly. Unfortunately, she was met with silence. But the more silent it was, the more ominous premonition rose in Lian Meng's heart. Especially when she was in such a strange purple light, it made Lian Meng feel a sense of loneliness that was completely isolated from the outside world. "Lian Meng, my disciple, come." Suddenly, an ancient voice sounded from the Grand Clear statue. Lian Meng raised her head, and her beautiful eyes saw a purple vortex appear at the center of the great clear god statue. The depths of the purple vortex were deep and mysterious, and the voice was extremely ethereal. Lian Meng was not unfamiliar with this voice. It was the voice of her master, the Grand Clear. "Master, is that you?" Lian Meng subconsciously called out. Unfortunately, the only response he received was a long silence. Struggle appeared in Lian Meng's eyes. She deeply looked at the purple vortex before her, gritted her teeth, raised her jade foot, and stepped into the purple vortex that appeared at the center of the Grand Clear statue. When Lian Meng's figure completely disappeared into the purple vortex at the center of the Grand Clear statue, the purple light in the Virtue Hall gradually receded. The purple light that burst from the Grand Clear statue's eyes also gradually dimmed. Everything in the Hall of Virtue had returned to normal, and the purple vortex at the center of the Great Qing Divine statue had vanished. It was as if nothing had happened in the Hall of Morals. The only difference was that Lian Meng was no longer in the Virtue Hall. Yuan stood at the end of the ruins. In front of him, there was an extremely inconspicuous small slope. This small mound was slightly raised, just like a small grave. The small slope in front of him was the entrance to the peerless ominous vein recorded in the jade slip. With Zhuowen's level of formation Dao, he could naturally tell at a glance that there was actually an extremely powerful restriction covering the surface of the small slope. Only by breaking this restriction could he enter the restriction. After undoing the restriction on the small slope, Zhuowen pushed it open. Suddenly, a terrifying fiendish aura gushed out from the bottom of the small slope. This murderous aura was almost tangible. The moment it rushed out of the small slope, it turned into a huge ferocious head. Like a wild beast, it pounced on Zhuowen, as if it wanted to devour Zhuowen. Zhuowen let out a cold harumph and waved his sleeve. The head formed by the murderous aura immediately turned into ashes. However, Zhuowen did not show the slightest complacency. Instead, he looked dignified. The entrance to the peerless ominous vein actually had such a terrifying murderous aura. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the murderous aura would be if he entered the interior of the peerless ominous vein. Zhuowen did not hesitate and stepped into the interior of the entrance. At the same time, he set up a formation at the entrance to cover up all the murderous aura escaping from the entrance. After entering, Zhuowen found that it was a natural cave. The cave he was in now was about 500 square meters in size. On his left and right sides were hard rock walls. In front of and behind him, there were passages in all directions. They looked like holes in a beehive and were extremely complicated. Moreover, the murderous aura inside was extremely terrifying. Waves of murderous aura invaded Zhuowen's sea of consciousness from time to time. If an ordinary cultivator were to be invaded by this baleful aura, they would easily be affected and turned into a madman who only knew how to kill. However, Zhuowen was different. Not to mention that he was not an ordinary cultivator, his soul was so powerful that it had definitely surpassed any cultivator in the Void Sky 9 steps. It was probably close to a Dao validation expert. Although the murderous aura in the ominous vein was terrifying, it did not have much impact on Zhuowen. Zhuowen continued to go deeper. He extended his spiritual sense to explore which of the passages was useful. Unfortunately, although his spiritual sense was powerful, these passages were too deep. His spiritual sense could not find anything. In the end, Yun could only rely on luck to choose a passage at random and continue to explore along this passage. Moreover, Yun also found that the deeper he went, the more terrifying the murderous aura was. Zhuan could hear ghostly wails and howls from time to time. However, Zhuan did not care about these at all. Instead, he continued to go deeper by guessing. As he continued to go deeper, he found that although these passages were complicated, they all led to the same destination. They all converged on the main road at the front. Although Zhuowen was merely guessing, he had already roughly grasped the meridians and veins of this ominous vein along the way. He guessed that there was definitely a main road at the end of the path. These passages were like countless streams converging into the sea. They would eventually converge on that main road. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While Zhuan was thinking, a rather dense sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from around him. Immediately, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. The sound of something breaking through the air was getting closer and closer until it finally appeared behind him. Zhuowen snorted coldly. His right palm blasted behind him without warning. Then, a wail came from behind him. Only then did he realize that this was the thing that had attacked him. It was a creature that was only half the height of a human. Its entire body was covered in black hair. Its body was stooped like a monkey, but its appearance was completely different from a monkey. The black hair completely covered the entire body of this creature, making it impossible for Zhuowen to see what it looked like under the black hair. The black-furred monster was smashed into the rock wall by Zhuowen's palm. It only wailed for a while before it nimbly slipped away. Its speed was so fast that Zhuowen was speechless. What is this thing? Its body is really strong. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Although he did not use his full strength in that palm strike, even a cultivator in the Enlightenment realm would be severely injured. However, the black-furred creature only wailed a few times before it escaped again. This made Zhuowen quite curious about this black-furred creature. So. While Zhuowen was deep in thought, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out again. This time, it was extremely dense. Soon after, Zhuowen discovered pairs of green eyes in the surrounding pitch-black tunnels. Chapter 2593. Stone Coffin. There was no doubt that the owners of those green eyes were the same as the black-furred creature that Zhuowen had just injured. Zhuowen did not expect that there would be so many black-furred creatures here. Although the black-furred creatures were not very strong, their physical bodies were extremely abnormal. Roars suddenly resounded like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. Then, the black-furred creatures rushed toward Zhuowen in tacit understanding. Zhuowen no longer held back. His right hand clenched into a fist and suddenly blasted out. Profound death divine energy swept out like a storm, and then all the black-furred creatures that were flashing over were blasted away by this terrifying divine energy. What a strong physical body! Zhuowen looked at the black-furred creatures that had fallen on the surrounding rock walls. When they appeared in front of him again, Zhuowen's eyes finally revealed a solemn expression. Swoosh, swoosh. The black-furred creatures did not seem to know fear. After getting up, they immediately pounced again. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. They turned into a fishy wind and continued to rush towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He blasted out the mysterious death divine energy again and blasted the black-furred creatures away. However, the black-furred creatures were like unkillable cockroaches that got up again and again. Zhuowen snorted coldly. The sword finger on his right hand touched between his eyebrows and he immediately took out the death sacrifice sword. As soon as the death sacrifice sword appeared, it immediately turned into a flowing light and swept across the sky. In the end, it slashed the black-furred creature that had pounced on him first. Sizzle! Sizzle! The black-furred creature let out a blood-curdling scream. Its originally extremely powerful body was sliced into pieces like tofu by the death sacrifice sword. The moment the black-furred creature was destroyed, the death sacrifice sword swept across the sky without any obstruction. It pierced through more than 10 black-furred creatures and then floated around Zhuowen again. The death sacrifice sword seems to be very effective against the black-furred creatures. Could it be because the death sacrifice sword is a divine weapon? Zhuowen's eyes brightened. The sacrifice sword had the ability to restrain the black-furred creatures. To him, this was a timely rain. The black-furred creature's powerful body had caused Zhuowen quite a bit of confusion. Since the sacrifice sword could restrain the black-furred creature, it was indeed very useful to Zhuowen. Holding the sacrifice death sword, Zhuowen continued to go deeper. As he went deeper, he discovered that the number of black-furred creatures was clearly increasing. Moreover, the baleful aura in the depths was also increasing as he went deeper. With the sacrificial death sword, Zhuowen had a much easier time dealing with these black-furred creatures. It was basically no different from cutting vegetables. About an hour later, Zhuowen walked out of the passage and arrived at an even wider passage. Zhuowen turned around and saw that the tunnels behind him extended in all directions. He knew that he had reached the main tunnel in front of him. This passageway was extremely long, and the baleful aura that was originally present in this passageway had instead disappeared without a trace. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with suspicion. He felt that the situation in this passageway was too unusual. It even made him feel that it was extremely strange. Zhuowen had checked Su Liang's soul memories and knew that Su Liang had also come to this main passageway before. However, this main passageway was extremely long and Su Liang had yet to finish walking it. From Su Liang's memories, Zhuowen knew that this main passageway was much more dangerous than the other passageways. Therefore, after entering this main passageway, he didn't dare to be careless. Instead, he became even more cautious and vigilant. After walking for about 100 meters, Zhuowen discovered that the surrounding scenery had begun to change. When he first entered the main passageway, he was surrounded by cold and pitch-black rock walls. But now, what appeared around him was no longer a rock wall, but a hollow cave. Each cave was only about half a meter high, and they were stacked layer by layer on top of each other, appearing densely on both sides of Zhuowen. Zhuowen approached one of the caves. His eyes were like torches as he looked into the cave. He vaguely felt that there was something inside. However, the surface of each cave here had a natural force that blocked spiritual sense. Although Zhuowen's spiritual sense was strong, the moment it entered the cave, it was blocked by this invisible force, making it impossible for him to see what was inside the cave. Although he vaguely felt that there was something inside the cave, he wasn't sure what it was. Thinking of this, Zhuowen grabbed at the air with his right hand. His profound death divine power turned into an invisible hand and grabbed at the cave. Although this cave had a mysterious force, this force seemed to only block a cultivator's spiritual sense. It didn't hinder other forces, so Zhuowen's profound death divine power hand entered the cave unimpeded. The moment Zhuowen grabbed the thing inside the cave, his pupils shrank and he revealed a look of surprise. This was because what he grabbed from the cave was actually a simple and mysterious stone coffin. The surface of the stone coffin was engraved with all kinds of complicated and mysterious patterns. A vicissitude and strange aura was released from the stone coffin. Zhuowen's eyes showed hesitation. In the end, he didn't open the stone coffin because he felt that this stone coffin was very strange and even gave him a sense of threat. Could it be that there is a stone coffin in every cave here? Zhuowen put the stone coffin back into the cave and looked at the other caves around him. There were at least hundreds of caves here. Could it be that there was a stone coffin in every cave? Then there were hundreds of stone coffins? With this doubt in mind, Zhuowen tried to grab the other caves, but he found that they were all empty. Only the cave he had just touched had a stone coffin hidden inside. After wandering around for a while, Zhuowen left this place and continued to go deeper. He had a feeling that there should be something good hidden in the deepest part of this fierce vein. Otherwise, this fierce vein wouldn't have formed for no reason. After all, the more dangerous a place was, the more likely it was for a peerless treasure to appear. This was the law of the world. After Zhuowen left the cave area, a strange green light suddenly burst out from the cave where Zhuowen had taken out the stone coffin. Then, the stone coffin covered with mysterious patterns automatically floated out of the cave. The patterns on the stone coffin's surface emitted a strange green light. The stone coffin's lid slowly opened. Then, from the gap of the coffin lid, a green withered arm stretched out. Someone else is here? I remember that the last person who came here was an old guy called Su Liang. That old guy was very clever. When he knew that he was no match for me, he immediately used an escape talisman to escape. It was a pity. But this time, someone else is here. I won't let him escape. A strange and unpleasant voice like that of an owl came out from the stone coffin. Chapter 2594. Green-haired mummy Zhuowen stood in the deepest part of the cavern. It was an extremely spacious cavern. In this cavern, the evil qi had completely condensed into a substance. It was like a mountain pressing down on Zhuowen's body. If it weren't for Zhuowen's strong physical body, it would have been extremely strenuous for him to stay in this cavern. Moreover, the evil qi was very terrifying. Even experts in the two extremities of life and death would not be able to stay in this environment for long. Once one stayed in this place for a long time, they would probably go crazy. It was even possible that they would be torn into countless blood foam by this terrifying evil chi. In the center of the cavern, there was a black pool about 10 feet wide. This pool was very strange. It was not still, but constantly flowing and rolling. Moreover, every time it rolled, it would emit a ghostly wail. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he quietly looked at the pool. He could see that the water in the pool was not water at all. It was actually the pool of vengeful souls, which was formed by countless vengeful souls. Moreover, each vengeful soul was extremely powerful. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a dignified look. He could feel that this pool of vengeful souls was not simple. Zhuowen's consciousness carefully probed into the pool of vengeful souls. The moment his consciousness entered the pool, it was like a stone falling into a pool, causing 1,000 ripples. The endless vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls seemed to have gone crazy. They surged out and swept towards Zhuowen's consciousness, trying to extinguish Zhuowen's consciousness. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that the vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls seemed to have a limit. Once these vengeful souls wanted to follow his consciousness out of the pool and rush toward Zhuowen's body. When they reached the edge of the pool, the vengeful souls would let out mournful cries as if they had been stimulated by something, and then they would retreat back into the pool. It seems that there is some kind of power in the pool of vengeful souls that restricts these vengeful souls. I wonder if there is some kind of treasure hidden in the depths of the pool of vengeful souls? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Although it was just a guess, he was even more certain that there was definitely a precious treasure hidden in the depths of the pool of vengeful souls. Moreover, it was an extraordinary treasure. Zhuowen's spiritual consciousness was strong enough, but the moment he entered the pool of vengeful souls, his spiritual consciousness was immediately destroyed by these vengeful souls. If it weren't for the restriction of some kind of power in the pool of vengeful souls, these vengeful souls would probably have pestered Zhuowen and tried to kill him as well. From this, it could be seen that the vengeful spirits in the pool of vengeful souls were extremely terrifying. Once entangled with them, Yuan had no good way to get rid of them and suppress them. With such a group of terrifying vengeful spirits guarding it, Zhuowen naturally guessed that there must be something good inside. Try again. Zhuowen once again derived his spiritual consciousness and used the soul kill. The terrifying spiritual consciousness was like a long spear that was thrown out, tearing through the air and making a terrifying hissing sound. Suddenly, many vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls were destroyed by Zhuowen's soul kill. Unfortunately, the vengeful souls were endless. Zhuowen relied on the soul kill technique and was only about 10 meters deep into the pool of vengeful souls before he was destroyed by the vengeful souls' attacks. Zhuowen's face was extremely pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The destruction of his spiritual consciousness twice had caused Zhuowen a lot of internal injuries. It seems that my spiritual consciousness is still not strong enough. Otherwise, I can use my powerful spiritual consciousness to explore the pool of vengeful souls. Zhuowen glanced at the pool of vengeful souls. He didn't have the courage to enter the pool of vengeful souls alone. Before exploring the pool of vengeful souls clearly, it was not wise for him to rashly enter the pool of vengeful souls. Boom! Suddenly, a sense of crisis rose in Zhuowen's heart. Then, he heard a terrible explosion behind him. Zhuowen growled and immediately summoned the phagocytosis to protect his back. Then he felt a terrible force behind him. He was sent flying with a groan. When Zhuowen steadied himself, he looked at the entrance in front of him with a gloomy expression. At the entrance, a 2-meter-tall mummy had appeared out of nowhere. The dried corpse was dark green in color, and its body was covered with lush green hair. It looked extremely disgusting. Good reaction. You don't seem to be the human who came in last time. It seems that your strength is not bad. At least, you are stronger than the human who came in last time. The green-haired mummy sneered. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. The aura of the green-haired mummy gave him a familiar feeling. Did you come out from the sarcophagus just now? Zhuowen asked in a low voice. The green-haired mummy sneered and said, Your reaction is not bad. You actually guessed my origin. Zhuowen frowned and said indifferently, I didn't offend you. Why did you attack me? Zhuowen became vigilant in his heart. This green-furred corpse looked extremely strange. Especially after the previous exchange, Zhuowen knew that this green-furred corpse was very powerful. It was stronger than the Black Smoke King, but it should be weaker than the Heavenly Law Lord. The mummy sneered and said, "You didn't offend me, but I'm really hungry. I really want to taste human flesh." Zhuowen's eyes narrowed and said coldly, "With your strength, you can leave this place and find someone else, right? You didn't make a wise choice by coming to find me." The mummy's expression changed slightly, and the ferocious aura on its body surged. It said coldly, "If I could leave, would I still stay in this damned place where I can't see the light of day? For countless epochs, I've seen this starry sky transform into mulberry fields and eras change. However, I've always been holed up in this corner, constantly being exhausted by that guy. My strength is constantly declining. When my strength is completely reduced to that of an ordinary person, I'll completely disappear." Zhuowen's eyes moved. He didn't really understand what the mummy was saying. Moreover, this green-haired monster said that it had seen this starry sky transform into mulberry fields. Then, was this starry sky that the green-haired monster was talking about the 8 heavenly domains? Or was it the entire starry sky that included the Xianmi heavenly domain and the prehistoric heavenly domain? Boom! As soon as the mummy finished speaking, it threw a punch without any warning. Its speed had broken through the speed of sound. However, the moment the mummy's fist landed in front of Zhuowen, a rumbling explosion slowly sounded behind it. Zhuowen also threw a punch. This punch contained the strength of his main body and his doppelganger. It also surpassed the speed of sound. Rumble! The two fists collided and set off a terrifying shockwave. The space exploded, but the cave was as stable as Mount Tai under the aftermath of the collision. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and retreated again. His back was almost pressed against the rock wall behind him before he managed to stabilize himself. Chapter 2595. Pool of Damned Souls. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with shock. This green-furred corpse's physical body was a little too terrifying, wasn't it? After the original body and the doppelganger merged, they were actually at an absolute disadvantage in a head-on clash of physical bodies. Not bad, not bad. Your body is not bad. Unfortunately, you've met me. Even the 12 ancestral sorcerers are no match for me in terms of body. You're nothing. The green-haired mummy laughed sinisterly and took a step forward, leaving a deep footprint on the ground. He then charged toward Zhuowen like a gust of wind. Zhuowen's face turned ugly. He looked coldly at the green-haired mummy and immediately separated his clone. The clone revealed Devourer King's original body and smashed towards the green-haired mummy with phagocytosis. Bang, bang, bang. The green-haired mummy collided with Devourer King. Zhuowen's face turned gloomy as he realized that Devourer King's clone was at a disadvantage. Zhuowen's original body took out the sacrificial death sword and joined forces with Devourer King's clone to attack the green-haired mummy. However, even with the addition of the sacrificial death sword, Devourer King's clone didn't gain the upper hand. He was still suppressed by the green-haired mummy. Zhuowen's original body formed hand seals and began to set up level 9 grand formations around him. What Zhuowen had set up was a level 9 array that could be completed in a short period of time. Zhuowen naturally gave up on those complicated level 9 grand formations. The battle wouldn't last long. If he were to set up those complicated grand formations, he would be out of his mind. After setting up the grand formations, Zhuowen immediately activated the grand formations. Streaks of formation energy turned into countless streams of light and blasted towards the green-haired mummy. Zhuowen's original body formed hand seals and pointed a finger at the void. He used the slaughtering finger of the tyrannical art of slaughtering Dao. The formless slaughtering finger traversed the void and landed in front of the green-haired mummy. The green-haired mummy was focused on the battle with Devourer King's clone. Coupled with the grand formations that Zhuowen had just set up, he didn't notice the slaughtering finger's appearance. The slaughtering finger was extremely fast. In an instant, it pierced through the air and landed on the green-haired mummy. Boom, 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 boom. The green-haired mummy was caught by surprise. The sacrificial death sword and Devourer King's clone's attack. the attacks of the sacrificial death sword and Devourer King's clone were. In an instant, the green-haired mummy. Boom! The green-furred mummy heavily smashed into a nearby rock wall. However, Zhuowen quickly discovered that the green-furred mummy slowly stood up. It twisted its neck and looked at Zhuowen with a grin. Not bad. Your strength is much stronger than that egg from last time. You actually managed to injure me. Zhuowen felt a chill in his heart. He had used almost all of his trump cards, but the green-haired mummy was only slightly injured. What kind of monster was this? According to Zhuowen's observation, the strength of this monster was only slightly stronger than Black Smoke King. However, the monster's body was so terrifying that there was simply no way to deal with it. Is this monster really an expert from the era of the 12 ancestral sorcerers of the untainted heavenly domain? But I don't know why he's trapped in this ominous vein. Zhuowen thought to himself. He quietly retreated. The green-haired mummy's body was too strong. It was like an unkillable cockroach. If he were to fight this monster head-on, he would definitely be exhausted to death. But you've really angered me. The green-haired mummy's eyes shone with green light. An extremely terrifying aura suddenly erupted. In an instant, the surrounding air seemed to have frozen. Zhuowen's gaze focused slightly, and he didn't hesitate in the slightest to execute the slaughtering Dao finger once more. The slaughtering Dao finger that condensed the heaven Dao shot out like an arrow that left the bow, and it heavily smashed onto the corpse. Rumble! The green-haired mummy roared angrily and was sent flying again. However, the green-haired mummy was in a much better state than before. It grabbed the slaughtering finger in the air and tore it apart. With a gentle twist, it landed on the ground. Then, the green-haired mummy bounced up and continued to rush toward Jun. Zhuowen sighed softly and hurriedly rushed towards the exit. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the speed of the green-haired mummy. The mummy was much faster than him. It landed in front of him in advance and threw a punch at him. The Devourer King arrived in front of Zhuowen in advance. He crossed his arms and tried to block the green-haired mummy's punch. Bang! The scales on the arms of the Devourer King's true body were blown away. Blood splattered everywhere as he was sent flying. Even his true body was sent flying backwards. The direction in which Zhuowen was sent flying was the center of the pool of wronged souls. Not good. When Zhuowen noticed the pool of wronged souls below him, he knew something was wrong. His profound death god energy surged out and tried to change the direction. However, the wronged souls in the pool of wronged souls pounced on Zhuowen and pulled him into the pool of wronged souls. In just a short while, Zhuowen disappeared into the pool of wronged souls. The green-haired mummy came to the edge of the pool of wronged souls. He looked at the countless wronged souls in the pool of wronged souls with a hesitant expression. What bad luck. I can't believe I let that kid fall into the pool. It seems like he's dead for sure. My efforts were in vain. Sigh, when will my days come to an end? I really don't want to stay in this godforsaken place any longer. The green-haired mummy looked up at the sky and sighed. Then he left the underground cave. The moment Zhuowen fell into the pool of vengeful souls, countless vengeful souls wailed and howled as they charged at Zhuowen, drowning him completely. The moment Zhuowen fell into the pool of wronged souls, he summoned Devourer King back into his body. At the same time, the death sacrifice sword revolved around his body to resist the surrounding wronged souls. The sacrificial death sword was quite effective against things like vengeful spirits. It was able to protect Zhuowen from being entangled by so many vengeful spirits. However, when Zhuowen looked at the countless wronged souls around him, he felt bitter. The death sacrifice sword could protect him from being torn apart by the wronged souls. At the same time, he couldn't control the death sacrifice sword to walk out of the pool of wronged souls. The wronged souls were constantly dragging him into the depths of the pool of wronged souls. It was wishful thinking for him to go out. Originally, I didn't want to enter the pool of wronged souls. But because of that green-haired monster, I was pushed into the pool of wronged souls. It's true that whatever you're afraid of, it will come true, Zhuowen muttered bitterly. After Zhuowen swallowed several healing divine pills, he began to observe his surroundings. But what made him smile bitterly was that there was nothing but countless wronged souls around him. There wasn't even a medium for him to swim out of the pool of wronged souls. Do I have to keep sinking like this? What's down there? Zhuan muttered with a gloomy look in his eyes. Although he knew that there might be a treasure at the bottom of the pool of wronged souls, it was only a guess. Even if there was, he needed to be alive to take it. Chapter 2596. At the bottom of the pool roar. If not for the protection of the sacrificial death sword, one would have been devoured by the endless roar of roaring spirits. Why is the pool of vengeful souls so deep? It's been several hours, but I still feel like I'm sinking? Zhuan muttered to himself. Realizing that something was wrong, his face turned ugly. Forget it. Since I have nothing to do, I'll try to extend my consciousness outside. Maybe I can use the pool of vengeful souls to refine my consciousness. Thinking of this, Zhuan quietly extended his consciousness. However, as soon as his consciousness appeared in the protective range of the sacrificial death sword, the surrounding roaring spirits began to devour his consciousness frantically. Zhuan groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. The feeling of having one's consciousness gnawed away was equivalent to having one's nerves uprooted. It was extremely painful. Fortunately, Zhuan had countless treasures on him. After all, he had wiped out most of the experts of the palaces in the Taiqing immortal realm. Naturally, he had obtained a lot of spirit rings. The experts of the 100 palaces in the Taiqing immortal realm naturally had a lot of good things on them. In addition to Zhuowen's previous accumulation, it was not difficult to refine a divine pill that could restore one's consciousness. Although Zhuowen was not yet a heavenly law alchemist, he was becoming more and more proficient in alchemy by relying on the Emperor Elixir Fire's comprehension of alchemy. As the pool of vengeful souls continued to sink, Zhuowen not only used his consciousness to probe the outside from time to time, but also absorbed the experience of the Emperor Elixir Fire wholeheartedly. At the same time, he used the Emperor Elixir Furnace to refine divine pills that could restore one's consciousness. Zhuowen's alchemy skills improved rapidly. In just 3 months, he went from an idiot in alchemy to a level 9 alchemist. Now, as long as Zhuowen had the pill formula, it was easy for him to refine divine pills of level 9 or below. In particular, there were very few pill formulas for divine pills that could restore one's consciousness. However, the second elder of the pill tower had given Zhuowen many ancient books, which contained various pill formulas collected by the pill tower over the years. Among them, Zhuowen, of course, this was the divine pill formula. Of course, this was the divine pill formula. It divine chi pill. Was pill divine pill. Due to the rarity of divine pills that could restore one's divine soul, it was said that the value of this Qishan pill was comparable to an ordinary heavenly Dao grade divine pill. The raging alchemy fire burned in the imperial pill furnace. The imperial pill turtle had already left the imperial pill furnace and kept rolling its eyes at Zhuowen. The temperature of the alchemy fire was very high. Although the imperial pill turtle's body was terrifying, the feeling of being burned by the alchemy fire was not pleasant. It would not foolishly stay in the imperial pill furnace and be roasted by the fire. Suddenly, Zhuowen opened his eyes. Boundless light burst forth from his eyes. Then, he shouted in a low voice and slapped the surface of the imperial pill furnace with his right hand. The lid of the imperial pill furnace immediately flew up and out. Then 12 pills flew out from the imperial pill furnace. Zhuowen took out a jade bottle and put all 12 pills inside. There were 12 pills in a furnace. This was Zhuowen's first time refining the divine chi pill. His luck was good and he succeeded in refining all of them on the first try. Although looking at the luster on the surface of the Qishan pill, the quality was not particularly high. For a novice like Zhuowen to be able to succeed on his first attempt at refining the Qishan pill was definitely not bad. Although Zhuowen did not have many herbs for the divine chi pill, he still had the quantity of 50 furnaces. In other words, if he succeeded in refining the divine chi pill 50 times, Zhuowen would have a reserve of 600 divine chi pills. In the following time, Zhuowen did not stop refining divine chi pills. 3 months later, he successfully refined 40 furnaces of divine chi pills. As for the remaining 10 furnaces, they were naturally failures. After putting away the Imperial Pill Furnace, Jun found that he was still sinking in the pool of vengeful souls. One had to know that he spent 3 months studying alchemy techniques and 3 months refining divine chi pills. In total, half a year had passed. Even if he sank into the sea, he should have sunk to the bottom of the sea. However, he was still sinking in the pool of vengeful souls. How deep was the pool of vengeful souls? Zhuan realized the seriousness of the situation. He knew that if he continued to sink, he would not have the chance to leave the pool of vengeful souls. Therefore, he had to save himself. Thinking of this, Jun continued to use his divine sense to explore the outside. In the past 6 months, Yun had been carefully probing with his divine sense. From the original few meters, his divine sense could now explore dozens of meters outside. His progress could be said to be not small. However, dozens of meters were simply a drop in the bucket for him. However, Jun did not need to be so careful anymore because he had the divine chi pill. He could violently explore with his divine sense. Even if his spirit was damaged, he only needed to take the divine chi pill and his spirit could quickly recover. Thinking of this, Jun no longer had any scruples. His divine sense blasted out like a storm. At the same time, he also used the soul kill. Suddenly, a large number of vengeful souls in the surroundings were strangled and annihilated by the soul kill. However, there were too many vengeful souls. After the surrounding vengeful souls were strangled and formed an empty area, the vengeful souls behind rushed forward to fill the empty area. Zhuan's divine sense was also gnawed away by these more ferocious vengeful souls. Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. He immediately took out the divine chi pill and swallowed it. Once again, he used the soul kill to strangle the surrounding vengeful souls. He took a step forward. After taking a few steps, he was surrounded by vengeful souls again. Zhuan once again used the soul kill to clear the path. I've reached the bottom of the pool? In the process of using the soul kill, Zhuan walked aimlessly. In this pool of vengeful souls, there were only vengeful souls. Zhuan couldn't figure out the specific direction at all. He couldn't even tell up from down. When Zhuan found that the surrounding vengeful souls began to thin out, he found that he had already fallen to the bottom of the pool. The bottom of the pool was no different from the bottom of an ordinary pool. There were fine sand and stones, but the number of vengeful souls was much less. Zhuan's spirit had been strengthened a lot during this period of tempering. The vengeful souls at the bottom of the pool did not pose much of a threat to him. Chapter 2597. Mysterious Big Banner walking at the bottom of the pool, Zhuan's pressure was reduced by a lot. At the same time, he was very curious about what was in front of him that could make these fearless, vengeful spirits so afraid. With this curiosity, Zhuan kept moving forward and finally stopped in front of a reef that was as tall as 2 people. This reef stood at the bottom of the pool, all alone and looked very unique. But there was not a single vengeful spirit here, just a reef standing there. Zhuan felt strange and immediately walked to the reef to observe carefully. After a long time, he did not find anything and just thought that it was just an ordinary reef. Therefore, Zhuan probed the reef with his divine sense, wanting to explore the reef. But the moment his divine sense probed into the interior of the reef, his face suddenly changed. This was because he discovered that his divine sense was like entering a bottomless pit. His divine sense was constantly being sucked in by the things inside the reef. What's going on? Zhuan's face was filled with panic. He wanted to withdraw his spiritual sense but found that it was not there. And when he wanted to cut off his spiritual sense, he found that it was still useless. This reef had a mysterious force that pulled Zhuan's spiritual sense, constantly pulling his spiritual sense into the depths and absorbing it. Bang, bang, bang. Zhuan even found that the soul constellations in his soul space were constantly shattering and turning into dust. The speed of the soul constellations shattering was too fast. In the blink of an eye, 1/10 of the soul constellations had already shattered. Zhuan was overwhelmed with shock. This was simply too terrifying. He knew very well that if all his soul constellations shattered, he would very likely become an idiot. Zhuan roared and began to swallow the soul-unifying pill. He hoped that with the help of the soul-unifying pill, he could slow down the speed of the shattering of the soul constellations. The soul-unifying pill did have some effect, but the speed of slowing it down could not keep up with the speed of the shattering of the soul constellations. Zhuan gritted his teeth and took out bottles of soul-unifying pill. Then he began to gulp down bottles of soul-unifying pill like a madman. 3 days later, Zhuan lay paralyzed on the ground, his face pale and bloodless. In the end, there was only one divine soul constellation left in his divine soul space, and there were only 10 bottles of unifying spirit pills left, and the suction force from the reef finally stopped. Zhuan wanted to cry but had no tears. Right now, he was extremely weak and his soul was permanently damaged. He knew very well that if he didn't have a heaven-defying item to recover his soul, then his soul would only be at its current level, barely reaching the average level of a void sky cultivator. It's over. I'm afraid I won't be able to get out with this little bit of divine soul. Zhuan smiled helplessly. He looked at the reef in front of him with a hint of fear. He still didn't know what was inside the reef to be able to absorb his soul. If it weren't for Zhuan's divine soul being much stronger than ordinary cultivators, coupled with the chi spirit pill, Zhuan would have really fallen here. Gotcha! Suddenly, countless cracks appeared on the surface of the black reef, and then it exploded with a loud bang. Immediately after, Zhuan saw a large banner standing upright in the middle of the shattered reef. This large banner was about 1 meter long, and on the banner body, there was a seemingly substantial fiendish aura. It seemed to want to destroy the chaos and reopen the world. On the surface of the banner, there was a picture of a towering giant holding the heaven-splitting divine axe, splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. Outside the banner, there were mysterious prophecies revolving around it, and inside the banner, there was a heaven-splitting talisman. This large banner looked extremely shabby on the surface, as if it was found in a pile of junk. However, the patterns drawn on the banner body and the banner body were extremely exquisite, as if they weren't drawn, but there was some kind of Tao charm naturally imprinted on the banner. Zhuan sensed an extremely familiar aura from the banner. This aura was the same one that had come from the reef rock, the terrifying power that had devoured his soul. What is the origin of this large banner? It was actually devouring my divine soul before, and the surrounding vengeful spirits seemed to be very afraid of this large banner. Could it be that the origin of this large banner is extraordinary? Zhuan muttered to himself, but he didn't dare to go forward. This large banner was too strange. His divine soul was almost destroyed just now, and he still had some lingering fear. Just as Zhuan didn't dare to approach the large banner, Zhuan was surprised to find that the large banner turned into a black smoke with a whoosh and directly drilled into Zhuan's forehead. It was so fast that Zhuan didn't even have time to react. Zhuan was dumbfounded. Before he could react, he felt a heart-wrenching pain coming from his divine soul. He had no choice but to hold his head with both hands and constantly roll left and right. He only felt a splitting headache. The large banner had already appeared in his divine soul space, and then he discovered in despair that the last divine soul constellation in his divine soul space had been crushed. Moreover, the huge divine soul space that was like a starry sky was actually being stirred up by the large banner. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the divine soul space, as if it would collapse at any time. No, Zhuan let out a loud roar and fell to the ground, completely fainting. While Zhuan was unconscious, the large banner was still wreaking havoc in Zhuan's divine soul space, and it had no intention of letting Zhuan go. After a while, Zhuan's divine soul space was crushed, and the large banner released a white smoke that enveloped Zhuan's shattered divine soul space. If one looked carefully, this white smoke was completely different from ordinary white smoke. This white smoke seemed to be solid. It was milky white just like milk. This white smoke dissolved the shattered divine soul space, and in the end, it returned to chaos. The large banner was in the center of the chaos, silently hanging there, motionless. The sacrificial death sword that had been hiding in the center of Zhuan's divine soul trembled. It hid in a remote corner, not daring to approach the large banner at all. It was as if the large banner was as terrifying as a flood. My head hurts. What's wrong with me? Juan slowly opened his eyes. He only felt a splitting headache. He couldn't help but rub his forehead, and at the same time, he began to recall what had happened to him. Soon he thought of the large banner. It was because of that banner that he had fainted. My divine soul space is gone? When Juan began to check his divine soul space, he was completely stunned. The divine soul space that had been like a boundless starry sky had now been replaced by a mass of chaotic white smoke. Chapter 2598. Induction. What the hell is going on? My spiritual space has been taken over by this flag? Juan's eyes narrowed in disbelief. Moreover, Juan also discovered that this flag had no intention of harming him. After occupying his spiritual space, it did not do anything else. Moreover, Juan also discovered that although his spiritual constellation had been destroyed, the core of his spiritual soul was protected by this white smoke. Moreover, this white smoke contained a strange energy that was actually repairing and strengthening his spiritual soul. Moreover, Juan also discovered that his spiritual sense was many times stronger than before. Originally, he could only extend it to 12 meters in this pool of vengeful souls. However, he now felt that his spiritual sense could pierce through the entire pool of vengeful souls. The scene in the hole above the pool of vengeful souls was even clearer in his spiritual sense. Since when did my spiritual soul become so powerful? Could it be because of this flag? Juan was dumbfounded. However, he soon thought of the reason. He found it unbelievable. Now, even Juan himself could not estimate the strength of his spiritual soul. He only felt that his spiritual soul was very, very powerful. However, he was not sure how powerful it was. However, Juan soon became suspicious. Why did that flag stay in his spiritual space? Moreover, his powerful spiritual soul was given to him by this flag. Could it be because this flag absorbed the power of my spiritual soul? Then, for some unknown reason, my spiritual soul merged with this flag. This flag replaced my spiritual space. Or rather, it became a substitute for my spiritual space. Juan thought of a possibility. Although he felt that this possibility was ridiculous, it was the only possibility that could explain why this flag followed him. Moreover, this flag could exist in his spiritual soul. It should also be a Tao-proving divine tool. Moreover, it was not an ordinary Tao-proving divine tool. After all, the sacrifice death sword was trembling in fear under the pressure of the banner, not daring to move at all. It could be seen that the level of the banner was much higher than the sacrifice death sword. The fact that this flag can exist in the depths of the pool of vengeful souls, and the fact that the countless vengeful souls in the pool of vengeful souls don't dare to approach it, and the fact that those vengeful souls are extremely fearful of this flag shows that it has an extraordinary origin. Juan pondered to himself as a bright light appeared in his eyes. He knew that if these vengeful spirits were afraid of the banner, and his soul had inexplicably fused with the banner, didn't that mean that these vengeful spirits would be afraid of him as well? When he thought of this, Juan was eager to give it a try. Soon after, he stomped his right foot and flew towards the top of the pool of vengeful spirits. 100 meters above the bottom, countless vengeful spirits were wandering around. These vengeful spirits were like rootless duckweed, gathering and howling. Although the vengeful spirits were extremely rampant, they did not dare to approach within 100 meters of the ground. Although they did not have much intelligence, they still had instincts. They were extremely fearful of the banner hidden in the reef at the bottom of the pool, and their instincts drove them to stay away from the vengeful spirits. When Juan flew 100 meters, he naturally arrived in the circle of the wandering vengeful spirits. When Juan appeared, these vengeful spirits swarmed toward Juan. Juan's expression changed slightly. He did not expect that after his spirit had merged with the banner, it would not pose any threat to these vengeful spirits. But soon, Juan discovered that the vengeful spirits pouncing towards him revealed looks of fear, and immediately scattered in disarray. In a short while, the 100-meter radius around Juan seemed to have become a vacuum. There was not a single vengeful spirit in sight. It seems that it really is effective, Juan muttered in a low voice, and rushed towards the top of the pool of vengeful souls without any scruples. His speed was extremely fast. Any vengeful spirit that encountered Zhuan above was like a mouse that had encountered a cat. They fled one after another, not daring to approach Zhuan. In this way, Zhuan was like a fish in water, rushing upwards at an extremely fast speed. It took Zhuan 3 days to successfully jump out of the pool of vengeful souls and arrive at the previous cave. Although Zhuan had been sinking in the pool of vengeful souls for half a year, his sinking speed was extremely slow, like that of a turtle. But now, his speed was thousands of times faster than his sinking speed. It was not surprising that he had left the pool of vengeful souls in 3 days. After jumping out of the pool of vengeful souls, Zhuan's eyes were extremely vigilant. He looked around and found that the green-haired mummy was not in the cave. It had obviously left this place. However, Zhuan did not relax his vigilance. After confirming that the green-haired mummy was not inside, Zhuan let out a sigh of relief. Immediately, his vast divine sense began to scan the entire underground world of the peerless ominous vein. After combining with the mysterious banner, Zhuan's divine sense was unprecedentedly powerful. Originally, his divine sense was not enough to scan the entire peerless ominous vein thoroughly. After all, the peerless ominous vein contained a terrifying demonic aura, which hindered the detection of divine sense. Zhuan's divine sense was hindered by the demonic aura, so he could not detect the specific situation around him. But now, his divine sense was too powerful. Although the baleful qi was quite a hindrance to his divine sense, under his powerful divine sense, it was completely negligible. Zhuan's divine sense spread throughout the entire peerless ominous vein, divided into countless branches, and explored every nook and cranny of the ominous vein. He did not forget the purpose of entering the peerless ominous vein this time. It was to find the sorcerer tribe's secret book that Su Liang had hidden in the ominous vein. Previously, when he entered the peerless ominous vein, although he explored it quite carefully, the peerless ominous vein was too big and too complicated, and there were too many passages. He did not know which passage Su Liang had hidden the sorcerer tribe's secret book. After Zhuan entered the main passage from the branch passage, he directly entered the deepest part of the peerless ominous vein. Originally, he planned to explore the deepest part first, and then search the passages one by one. However, he did not expect to encounter the green-haired mummy and be thrown into the pool of vengeful souls by it. If it were not for Zhuan's great luck, he would have been a member of the pool of vengeful souls at this moment. It's actually there? It's hidden really well. Zhuan exclaimed softly, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. In the process of exploring the entire peerless ominous vein, he finally found the sorcerer tribe's secret book that was buried in the peerless ominous vein. The moment he found the sorcerer tribe's secret book, Zhuan rushed out and rushed towards the location of the sorcerer tribe's secret book. The moment Zhuan's divine sense spread throughout the entire peerless ominous vein, among the numerous caves in the main passage, one of the caves emitted a strange green light. Then in the cave, a huge stone coffin floated out. The surface of the stone coffin was engraved with many lines, and at this moment, it was emitting a green light. Bang! The lid of the stone coffin was directly blown away, and then a withered arm suddenly stretched out. The green-haired mummy's eyes were filled with surprise and uncertainty. Did I sense it wrongly? Why did the aura of the divine sense just now have the aura of that thing? Moreover, I also felt the aura of that human in this divine sense. What's going on? The green-haired mummy muttered to itself, and its eyes emitted a strange green light. Dang dang dang. Chapter 2599. Blood-stained horn. As the footsteps approached, the green-haired mummy's face turned gloomy. It was because it saw a vague figure in the depths of the passage. With the terrifying eyesight of the green-haired mummy, it recognized at a glance that the figure was the human who had been thrown into the pool of vengeful souls. The human is not dead? What's going on? The green-haired mummy was shocked and bewildered. Even it was extremely afraid of the pool of vengeful souls in the deepest part of the ominous spirit vein. If it fell into the pool of vengeful souls, although it might not die, it knew that it would not be able to leave the pool of vengeful souls. because there was something in the pool of vengeful souls that terrified it, and it happened to be the culprit that had suppressed it in the ominous spirit vein. In its opinion, since the human had fallen into the pool of vengeful souls, it was certain that the human was dead. Even if the human was not dead, he must be trapped at the bottom of the pool of vengeful souls. But now, not only was the human alive in front of it, but there was also a vague aura on the human's body that made the mummy wary. This aura made the green-haired mummy's eyes filled with surprise and doubt. Juan also saw the green-haired mummy in front of him. His eyes suddenly became serious and his heart was full of vigilance. The green-haired mummy's body was too terrifying. At present, Juan was not confident that he could defeat it. I can't fight this monster head-on. Its body is too terrifying. I'm definitely not its opponent. I have to find a way to avoid it and leave the passage. Juan had a headache, but he soon found that the green-haired mummy in front of him seemed to be hesitating. Moreover, he also found a trace of fear in the green-haired mummy's green eyes. If it was before, the green-haired mummy would have said something ruthless and then pounced on him without hesitation. But now it did not do so. Juan soon thought of the reason. Maybe the green-haired mummy was afraid of the mysterious banner in his divine soul. Thinking of this, Juan sighed in his heart. If the green-haired mummy was afraid of the mysterious banner, it would be best. In this way, when he escaped, the green-haired mummy would not attack him. At this moment, Juan moved. He was like an arrow that left the bow, and he suddenly flashed explosively towards the front. Shockingly, he went around the green-furred mummy, and he didn't intend to go head-on against it, and he wanted to avoid it. The green-furred corpse's glossy green eyes flickered. When Juan passed by it, it let out a low roar, and a withered, green arm suddenly reached out and grabbed at Juan's left chest. Juan let out a cold snort. A wisp of gray gas flew out from between his eyebrows and turned into a sacrificial sword, slashing towards the green-haired mummy's arm. Ding! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The sacrificial death sword, which was already a heavenly Tao-level divine artifact, was unable to leave a single mark on the green-furred corpse's arm. Bang! The sacrificial death sword was deflected away, and the green arm was like a furious dragon rushing towards Juan. Juan's eyes were gloomy. He immediately used Soul Kill. Now, his divine soul was extremely powerful. The power of the Soul Kill was definitely hundreds or thousands of times stronger than before. The invisible power of divine sense turned into a terrifying spiral force, stirring up the green-furred mummy's divine soul unceremoniously. The green-furred mummy covered its head, and its eyes were filled with pain. The right hand that was about to strike out also froze. Juan took advantage of this gap and punched the green-furred mummy's chest. One had to admit that the green-furred mummy's body was really terrifying. When Juan punched it, he actually felt a faint pain in his fist. It should be known that his original body had been soaked in the blood of a real dragon, and his doppelganger had the bloodline of the King Devourer. With the two combined, his body had reached an extremely terrifying level. Juan, who had such a powerful body, actually felt a faint pain in his fist when he punched the green-furred mummy. It could be seen that the strength of the green-furred mummy's body was far beyond Juan's imagination. Although the green-furred mummy wasn't injured, it was still thrown to the ground by Juan's punch. Juan took advantage of this opportunity to turn into a shadow and disappear in front of the passage. Although he could feel that the green-furred mummy was now wary of him, he also knew that the gap between him and the green-furred mummy was too big, especially that terrifying body. Even if the green-furred mummy stood there and let him hit it, Juan wouldn't be able to do anything to it. When Juan's figure completely disappeared, the green-furred mummy got up from the ground. Its eyes revealed a trace of throbbing and a touch of unprecedented excitement. The aura of the banner is on this boy. But how is that possible? The banner has great wisdom. Why would it choose such an inconspicuous boy? But this is also good. Without the suppression of the banner, the suppression of this peerless ominous vein will weaken. When the time comes, I will have more than enough time to leave this ominous vein. The green-furred mummy thought of something and couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile. Especially when it thought that it could leave this ominous vein that had trapped it for countless years, The smile on the corners of the mummy's mouth became even wider. Zhuan was very fast. In a short while, he came to the intersection of countless branches. He didn't even think about it and chose the left branch. Zhuan had already memorized the location where Su Liang had hidden the sorcerer's secret codex. Therefore, at this complicated intersection, he didn't hesitate to choose the right one. After running for a long time in this branch, Zhuan's divine sense also checked behind him from time to time. After finding that the green-furred mummy didn't chase after him, Zhuan relaxed a lot. Soon, Zhuan found Su Liang's original hiding place. It was a very inconspicuous and remote corner of the rock wall. After digging through the rock wall, Zhuan quickly found a spiritual ring. This spiritual ring was very ordinary, but there were many restrictions on its surface. Moreover, they weren't simple restrictions. Zhuan's eyes were serious. He made a gesture with his right hand and spent several hours to completely break the complicated restrictions on the surface of the spiritual ring. There was only one thing in the spiritual ring. It was a blood-stained horn. The horn was simple and unadorned. It looked ordinary, but Zhuan could feel an unusual aura from it. Nothing else. After Zhuan took out the horn, his divine sense checked the spiritual ring again. He found that other than this horn, there was nothing else in the spiritual ring. This made Zhuan frown. In his opinion, the sorcerer's secret codex should be recorded in a jade slip. However, he didn't find any jade slip in the spiritual ring. Chapter 2600. Giant, try using your consciousness. Zhuan expanded his consciousness and began to check the horn. He felt that the horn was not ordinary and that the sorcerer tribe's secret manual might be hidden in the horn. Suddenly, when Zhuan's divine sense landed on the tip of the horn, he felt a strange suction force. It was actually absorbing his divine sense. Hee, a mere human ant in the death realm dares to use your consciousness to check my horn. You really don't know your place. Suddenly, a loud consciousness appeared in Zhuan's spiritual soul. Then, Zhuan realized that a black gas was condensing in his spiritual soul and turned into a ferocious ghost face. It pounced on Zhuan's soul. The power of the ghost face was so great that it seemed to be able to swallow the world. Zhuan's spiritual soul was actually shaken by the ghost face's consciousness. At this moment, Zhuan's soul was much more powerful than before. However, under the influence of the ghost face's divine sense, it didn't seem to have much effect. In fact, it was even faintly suppressed. This made Zhuan extremely shocked. He knew that the ghost face's divine sense was extraordinary. What are you? Zhuan's face was gloomy. He wanted to find out the origin of the ghost face's consciousness. Hee, are you trying to trick me? Do you think I will be fooled? I will first devour your soul and occupy your body. Then, I will take the sorcerer tribe's secret manual for myself. You have to know that I have suffered a lot for the sorcerer tribe's secret manual. Today, I will finally get what I want. The ghost face's consciousness laughed loudly. His voice was filled with joy and mockery. However, his laughter did not last long. He let out a terrified cry. As the ghost face's spiritual will continued to penetrate deeper into Zhuan's soul, it finally reached the deepest part, where it saw the huge banner. The ghost face's consciousness looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed and quickly retreated. Unfortunately, the moment the ghost face's consciousness retreated, the banner suddenly moved. The mysterious banner rolled up, blotting out the sun as it shot out, immediately blocking the path of retreat of the ghost face's divine sense. The ghost face's consciousness looked at the mysterious banner behind him. The fear in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Finally, he screamed, "Why is there such a thing in your spiritual soul? This thing should not be here. How is it possible?" Zhuan looked at the ghost face's terrified expression in shock. He quickly asked, "Do you know the origin of this banner?" The ghost face's spiritual soul revealed a look of astonishment. He did not expect this human cultivator did not know the origin of the banner. Was he teasing him? But soon, the ghost face's spiritual sense did not care whether Zhuan was teasing him or not. The large banner had already attacked. The banners was Ghostface's spiritual soul, and the Ghostface's spiritual soul was screaming. The Ghostface's divine sense resisted with all its might and even unleashed a terrifying attack. Even in Zhuo Wen's eyes, such an attack was earth-shattering, but in front of the mysterious banner, it was like a chicken or a dog, unable to withstand a single blow. In the end, the Ghostface's spiritual soul was completely absorbed by the mysterious banner. Zhuo Wen was shocked. The Ghostface's spiritual soul was extremely terrifying. If it was not for the mysterious banner, Zhuo Wen knew that with his current spiritual soul, he would not be able to withstand the attack of the Ghostface's spiritual soul. He might even be successfully possessed by the Ghostface's spiritual soul. However, as soon as the mysterious banner appeared, it was able to easily deal with the ghostly face's spiritual sense. How could Zhuo Wen not be surprised? It's a pity that the mysterious banner absorbed the ghostly face's divine sense before it could reveal the origin of the mysterious banner. What a pity! Zhuo Wen shook his head and sighed helplessly. Zhuo Wen was very curious about the mysterious banner that could make the green-haired mummy afraid. He wanted to know the origin of the banner. Zhuo Wen picked up the blood-stained horn on the ground and muttered to himself, from the words of the Ghostface's spiritual soul, it's not difficult to guess that the sorcerer tribe's secret manual is hidden in the horn. Zhuo Wen's divine sense once again entered the horn through the tip of the horn. Soon, he discovered a whole new world. Inside the horn, Zhuo Wen discovered that he was no longer in the pitch-black cave of ominous veins. Instead, he was standing in a vast expanse of space. This starry sky was more solid, real, and vast than the starry sky of the 8 heavens. In particular, the starry sky energy that came from the starry sky was much stronger than that of the 8 heavens. It was even stronger than that of the primitive heavens. However, this starry sky was chaotic. Although it had the embryonic form of a starry sky, it was not a complete starry sky. It was more like a starry sky that had just been born. However, there was no doubt that this starry sky, which was still in chaos, contained extremely powerful starry sky energy. It was the most primitive energy. In this chaos, Zhuo Wen found that a giant figure had appeared in the distance. This figure was so tall that Zhuo Wen could only see the man's abdomen when he looked up. When he wanted to look up, he found that it was chaotic and he could not see the man's body above his abdomen. This peerless giant held an ancient giant axe with both hands. He only raised his right hand and chopped down. Then, the chaos in the starry sky was split open and the starry sky became clearer. Boom! Boom! Zhuo Wen saw this unprecedented giant continuously chopping down with the giant axe. Its speed was so fast that even Zhuo Wen's reaction could not keep up with the giant's speed. It was too fast. Every time the giant chopped down with the axe, the chaos in the starry sky became clearer, as if it was evolving into a real starry sky. In the end, the giant roared at the sky. That roar seemed to come from ancient times, from the endless void. It was distant yet close at the same time. It seemed to grow and multiply endlessly. Zhuo Wen almost fainted from this roar. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. However, Zhuo Wen's willpower was astonishing and he forcibly endured it. His eyes were dyed red as he stared fixedly at the indomitable giant. At this moment, the chaotic starry sky finally dispersed completely. Zhuo Wen saw the true face of this starry sky and the peerless giant. Even though the chaos was dispelled, the giant was too tall. Zhuo Wen still could not see the giant's face. He could only see the giant's shoulders. The giant's face was covered by the broad shoulders. When the chaos became clear, the giant roared again. The giant chopped up with the giant axe in both hands. It was as if there was something above the starry sky. Zhuo Wen raised his head and looked at the sky. There was only an endless void and nothing else. The 2 giant axe shadows rushed into the sky. They were extremely fast. They broke through the starry sky and disappeared into the endless darkness. In the endless darkness, Zhuo Wen's red eyes vaguely saw the 2 giant axe shadows being crushed by some kind of power. After the axe shadows were crushed, this inexplicable power quickly fell from the endless void. It was as if it came from another world. Chapter 2601. Pangu's image. This giant hand was the exact same color as the starry sky. It fell without a sound, but Zhuowen had sensed it. The giant hand was too fast. Wherever it passed, it swept up a trace of power that could tear the starry sky apart. Rumble! The giant hand smashed onto the giant's body. The giant roared and wanted to fight back, but sadly found that he was as weak as an ant in the hands of the giant hand. His resistance was like a child's struggle, completely useless. Then, Zhuowen looked on helplessly as the giant was squeezed by the giant hand. Blood splattered everywhere and flew into the surrounding starry sky. Zhuowen discovered that every drop of blood that flew out of the giant's mouth turned into a dazzling star. Countless drops of blood splattered out, forming countless stars in an orderly manner. The giant's bone fragments turned into all kinds of strange and dangerous places, continents, black holes, and other objects in the starry sky. When the giant was completely destroyed, the beautiful starry sky was completely formed. The giant hand that seemed to have appeared from another world quietly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. If the heavens want me to die, then I have to die. If I don't want to die, I have to break the heavens. A helpless and sorrowful voice sounded faintly in the starry sky, and also rose faintly in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen's mind trembled, and the pain was unbearable. Then, he found that the starry sky in front of him was becoming more and more blurry. At the last moment when he left the starry sky, Zhuowen found that the giant's heart had flashed out 12 streams of essence blood that seemed to have substance, flying in 12 directions. Zhuowen vaguely saw that the essence blood flying in 12 directions seemed to be pregnant with 12 blood-colored embryos. Each embryo contained a terrifying amount of life essence and power. Among the 12 embryos, Zhuowen felt the aura of one of the embryos, which gave him a very familiar feeling. The aura of the Zhurong Gu? That embryo is Zhurong, one of the 12 ancestral sorcerers. Then, are these 12 embryos the 12 ancestral sorcerers? As Zhuowen's spiritual force exited the image, a strange thought suddenly popped into his head. When Zhuowen collected his thoughts, he realized that blood was flowing out from his 7 orifices, and his head was in great pain. At the same time, a strange message appeared in his spirit. This message made Zhuowen forget the pain he was feeling. Is this the secret manual of the sorcerer tribe? No, this is actually the cultivation method of the ancestral shamans. Zhuowen was shocked. The information that suddenly appeared in his mind was actually a record of the ancestral shaman technique. In layman's terms, this was the method to cultivate to become an ancestral wizard, and the opportunity needed to reach the 3 extremes. Of course, the wizard tribe could do it as well. However, this technique specifically mentioned that cultivators of the 3 extremes had the possibility of cultivating various ancestral magus gu worms. It was said that if one could fuse the 12 ancestral sorcerer gu worms and cultivate, one could recreate the physical body of the ancestral sorcerer ancestor, Pangu. Pangu's body was called the Pangu Sacred Body. The Pangu Sacred Body was definitely the most powerful physical body in this starry sky. It was the primitive physical body that originated from the chaos of this starry sky. It was extremely powerful. That giant is Pangu. Zhuowen remembered that the giant he saw in the image recorded in the horn was Pangu. Zhuowen was no stranger to Pangu. In Huaxia mythology, Pangu was the god of creation. It was said that the entire world was split open by Pangu's axe. After splitting open the chaos, Pangu fell from exhaustion. After his death, his eyes turned into the sun and moon, and his physical body turned into famous mountains and rivers, creating the entire world. Zhuowen had always thought that Pangu was just a legend, but he did not expect that it was true. Pangu really existed. However, Pangu did not split open a small planet like Earth. He split open the chaos of the starry sky, creating the vast and boundless starry sky. Moreover, Pangu did not die from exhaustion. He was killed by an inexplicable force. The image of the giant hand that appeared from the endless void emerged in Zhuowen's mind. In the face of that giant hand, Pangu was powerless to resist and was crushed into nothingness by the giant hand. If heaven wants me to die, I have to die. If I don't want to die, I have to break heaven. Zhuowen whispered Pangu's words before his death. His eyes revealed a cautious look. He knew that the giant hand that killed Pangu was heaven, the omnipotent heaven. In front of the real heaven, a legendary figure like Pangu was killed like an ant. At the same time, Yuan thought of the mysterious banner in his divine soul. Wasn't the picture drawn on the banner the supreme picture of a peerless giant holding the heaven-splitting divine axe? Wasn't the picture drawn on the banner the scene of Pangu opening up the chaotic starry sky? Without exception, the mysterious banner must have a close relationship with Pangu. I finally know the rest of the cultivation of the three extremes. I have half of the Zhurongu. Although it's not complete, it's enough for me to cultivate to a wizard body comparable to the first step of Dao validation. In the horn, Yuan had obtained the complete cultivation method of the wizard ancestor. At the same time, he also learned about the cultivation levels of the wizard tribe. The division of the wizard tribe was extremely simple, from 1 star to 9 stars. A 1-star heaven wizard strength was similar to that of the heavenly Dao master at the first step of Dao validation. As a heaven wizard was a physical Dao validation, his strength was probably stronger than that of the heavenly Dao master. A 9-star heaven wizard strength was naturally comparable to that of the third step of Dao validation, the third realm of Dao validation. Heaven wizard was only a division of strength for ordinary wizards. Zhuan cultivated the wizard ancestor's method, so it should be from 1-star to 9-star ancestral wizard. An ancestral wizard's strength was much stronger than a heaven wizard's. It was said that the resources needed for a heaven wizard's cultivation were several to dozens of times more than that of a human cultivator. As for an ancestral wizard, it was even more terrifying. It was hundreds of times more than that of a human cultivator. The resources needed to advance could be said to be terrifying. Looks like I need to find a place to cultivate in seclusion and cultivate the wizard ancestor's method first. Zhuo Wen's eyes shone with excitement. He had obtained the Zhurong venom, the ancestral shaman's cultivation method, and he had mastered 3 extremities. He was naturally eager to try it out as soon as possible. However, he knew that he could not do so in the ominous vein. After all, the ominous vein was not a good place. There were many dangers inside, especially that green-haired mummy. Suddenly, just as Zhuan was feeling excited, the sound of something breaking through the air rushed over. Then a green light rushed over at a terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Zhuan and blasted into his chest. In the end, Zhuan only had time to take out the phagocytosis and protect it in front of his chest. Then he was shocked to find that the phagocytosis, which was originally as hard as a rock, had completely shattered. Then, the green light heavily smashed into Zhuowen's chest. Chapter 2602. Panga Banner. Zhuowen crawled to his feet and gloomily looked at the green-furred corpse in front of him. His powerful divine sense unleashed the soul kill technique, becoming exceptionally terrifying as it fiercely drilled into the green-furred corpse's divine sense. The green-haired mummy's face changed slightly. He was about to launch another attack, but he stopped abruptly. He stared coldly at Zhuowen and said in a deep voice, "You really got the Panga Banner. How did you do it?" Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He recalled the mysterious banner in his divine soul. Could the Panga Banner that the green-furred corpse spoke of be the mysterious banner that existed in his divine soul? Zhuan was no stranger to the Panga Banner. It was the life artifact of great god Pangu. It was said that when Pangu split open the heavens, he used the Panga Banner to split open the primal chaos. He used the Taiji diagram to stabilize the earth, fire, wind, and water, and he used 2 axes to split the heavens and earth. If the mysterious banner in his divine soul was really the Panga Banner, then it was definitely an incredible item. However, Zhuan did not feel the slightest bit of joy from obtaining the Panga Banner. Zhuan had clearly seen the scene in the blood-stained horn. In front of the omnipotent heaven, even Pangu had been killed in a single move. In other words, even if he had the Panga Banner and cultivated to the same level as great god Pangu one day, he could still be destroyed. Zhuan raised his eyes and looked at the green-furred corpse in front of him. Suddenly, he felt somewhat dispirited. If he guessed correctly, the green-furred corpse before him might have some connection to Pangu, and the fact that it was sealed in this peerless ominous vein might also have some connection to Pengu. However, Juan no longer cared about these things. What he cared about was, what exactly was the heaven that had killed Pengu? What exactly is heaven? Juan looked at the green-furred corpse in front of him and asked faintly. The green-furred corpse was startled. Then, it looked at the blood-stained horn in Juan's hand and revealed a trace of sadness and helplessness. However, it fell into a rare silence. Looking at the green-furred corpse's appearance, Juan did not ask any more questions. Instead, he turned and left. Juan had already read a lot of information from the eyes of the green-haired mummy. As for its attack just now, Juan could tell that it was to test his Panga banner. Since this green-haired mummy knew that he had the Panga banner and was looking at him with fear, he knew that this mummy would definitely not pester him. After all, the Panga banner was the source of the green-furred corpse's suppression. Seems like you've seen some secrets? Let me tell you this. The Panga banner that you are carrying is very powerful. However, it is actually badly damaged. It is no longer as powerful as it was back then. More importantly, you've obtained the Panga banner, which represents Panga's will. You might walk the same path as Pangu. If you don't want to die, I advise you to give up on the Panga banner. Suddenly, the green-furred mummy opened his mouth. His voice was hoarse and low, and there was a trace of helplessness in his tone. Juan's figure paused, but he did not stop walking. Instead, he strode forward and said in a clear voice, "In the past, I was muddle-headed. I cultivated for my family, for my loved ones, and to protect myself. But now I know that if I want to truly protect everything, I must become stronger. If this world is controlled, then I will break the sky. I don't want to inherit Panga's will. I just want to follow my own heart, so that the things I care about will not be hurt or deceived." The green-furred mummy stood where he was and stared blankly at the figure that was gradually disappearing into the distance. In the end, the green-furred mummy looked at the deep ominous vein behind him and stomped his right foot. Immediately, the ominous aura in the ominous vein was absorbed into the mummy's body. The Panga banner has been taken away, and I am free. But is this true freedom? After absorbing the ominous aura, the green-furred mummy's aura became much stronger. However, he stood where he was and was in a daze, silently thinking about something. In the end, the green-furred mummy took a step forward and left the peerless ominous vein. After leaving the peerless ominous vein, Jun stood not far from the entrance of the ominous vein and silently looked at the incomparably dark cave entrance. The ominous aura has disappeared, Jun muttered to himself. He knew why the ominous aura had suddenly disappeared. It was definitely related to the green-furred mummy. Moreover, his divine sense discovered that as the ominous aura disappeared, the black-furred creatures hidden in the ominous vein rapidly died. Obviously, these black-furred creatures relied on the ominous aura to survive. Now that the ominous aura had been completely absorbed by the green-furred mummy, these black-furred creatures naturally could not survive. A green shadow suddenly rushed out of the cave. Zhuan was already prepared. He immediately retreated dozens of steps and stared coldly at the green-furred mummy that appeared in front of him. The man and the beast looked at each other. Then, Zhuan ignored the green-furred mummy and turned to leave. However, he had only taken a few steps when he turned around and coldly looked at the green-furred mummy behind him. He said, "Why are you following me?" The green-furred mummy sneered, "Why are you so sure that I am following you? It's just that I'm going in the same direction as you." Zhuan nodded, turned around, and said indifferently, "Then you go first." The green-furred mummy frowned, crossed his arms, and said calmly, "I don't want to go now. I want to rest here for a while. You go first." "Do you not know the way?" Zhuan asked strangely. The green-furred mummy's eyes flickered. He coldly snorted and said, "Are you kidding? How can I not know the way? Why aren't you leaving? It's nothing to be embarrassed about not knowing the way. You've been trapped in the ominous vein for many years. This starry sky has changed, so it's normal that you don't know the way," Zhuan said with a smile. The green-furred mummy was a little angry and said coldly, "Get lost. This king's affairs are not for you to guess." Zhuan shrugged, not caring about the green-furred mummy's words. Instead, he rushed towards the ruins of the Mountain River Hall. After a while, he arrived at the ruins of the Mountain River Hall. At this moment, Lan Ji and Purple Star Sovereign were waiting for him. When the two saw Zhuan coming, their eyes lit up with joy. Zhuan had been away for more than a year. During this time, the two had gone out to look for Zhuan, but they didn't find any news. It was as if Zhuan had disappeared from the world. "Sir." "Brother Zhua." Lan Ji and Purple Star Sovereign quickly came forward to greet him. Zhuan also nodded and asked, "Did anything happen in the past year?" Lan Ji quickly said, "No, but many forces came to visit and gave me a lot of things." Zhuan nodded. Ever since he had killed the patriarch of the Mountain River Hall, Su Liang, and easily annihilated the experts of the 100 halls who had surrounded him, his name had spread throughout the Taiqing Immortal Realm and the Huaxia Immortal Region. Chapter 2603. Strange Lian Meng. "By the way, my lord, what's that monster behind you? It's been following you all this time, and it looks very strange." Lan Ji suddenly pointed at the green-furred corpse not far behind Zhuan and asked cautiously. Just now, he saw the green-furred corpse following behind them with a pair of green eyes. It looked very unfriendly. In addition, the green-furred corpse's aura was unfathomable, which was why Lan Ji asked this question. Purple Star Monarch also saw the green-furred corpse and looked at Zhuan with an inquiring gaze. "No need to pay attention to it. It's just a pet I took in. It's been following me all this time," Zhuan whispered. Lan Ji and Purple Star Monarch both understood, but they cursed in their hearts. No matter what, a pet should be pretty and cute, but Zhuan's pet was a little scary. The green-furred corpse naturally heard Zhuan's words. Its green eyes were full of unfriendliness, but it didn't do anything. "Let's go. Follow me to the Hall of Virtue. I want to know what happened to Grand Pure One." As Zhuan spoke, he waved his sleeve and left with Lan Ji and Purple Star Monarch. The green-furred corpse silently followed behind. When Zhuan arrived at the Hall of Virtue, he found that it was very cold and empty. The empty and secluded hall exuded an elegant sandalwood fragrance, which made people feel relaxed and happy. "Is this the Hall of Virtue? Why is there no one here?" Purple Star Monarch frowned. Lan Ji quickly said, "The Hall Master of the Hall of Virtue, Honorable Taiqing, is a quiet person. He doesn't like crowds, so his Hall of Virtue has never hired anyone. The only disciple he has is Lian Meng." Purple Star Monarch muttered, thinking that Honorable Taiqing was really strange. In such a big hall, there was only Honorable Taiqing and his disciple. The moment Zhuan entered the Hall of Virtue, he released his divine sense and found that there was no trace of anyone in the Hall of Virtue. However, among the clues, he found a familiar aura. This familiar aura came from the praying mat in the center of the hall. Zhuan walked in front of the praying mat and found that the familiar aura belonged to Lian Meng. Zhuan's gaze fell on the huge statue in the center of the hall. The statue's face was Honorable Taiqing, kind and peaceful. Zhuan silently looked at the statue in front of him and frowned. He had a feeling that the statue in front of him was looking at him. The statue didn't look like an inanimate object, but it was alive. However, Zhuan had used his spiritual perception to probe the stone statue in front of him and knew that there was nothing mysterious about it. However, Zhuan felt that the stone statue was giving him a strange feeling. Purple 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 Star Monarch Purple 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 Star God. Is Honorable Taiqing? Is Honorable. Purple Purple Star Monarch searched through the Hall of Virtue but didn't find anything. He walked to Zhuan's side. Lan Ji also said, "My lord, I heard that Honorable Taiqing, Shangqing, and Yuqing went into seclusion together and didn't come out for hundreds of years. I'm afraid Honorable Taiqing isn't in the Hall of Virtue." "Then do you know where Honorable Taiqing is in seclusion?" Zhuan asked. Lan Ji smiled bitterly. "My lord, no one knows about the Honorable Taiqing Immortal Realm. I'm no exception. Otherwise, the forces of the 100 halls of the Immortal Realm would have gathered at Honorable Taiqing's seclusion." Zhuan's eyes flashed. After a moment of silence, he turned around and looked at the statue in front of him. Then, purple mist erupted from his body. It was the power of the Tao will he comprehended. The purple mist was like a dragon. It swept towards the statue and circled around it. Finally, it gathered at the statue's abdomen and turned into a purple vortex. There's something strange about this statue. Zhuan looked at the purple vortex and said to Lan Ji and Crepe Star Monarch behind him, "You two leave the Hall of Virtue and wait for me outside. I'll go in and take a look." Lan Ji and Crepe Star Monarch didn't refuse. They knew Honorable Tai Ching was even more terrifying than Su Liang. If they really met such a terrifying expert, they would be cannon fodder. After Lan Ji and Crepe Star Monarch left the Hall of Virtue, Nguyen stepped into the purple vortex. He wanted to see what Honorable Tai Ching was up to. He was no longer the Zhuo One of the past. Even if he faced the Grand Pure One now, the Grand Pure One might not be able to do anything to him. After the purple vortex was a long passage. The passage was filled with purple mist and looked very mysterious. Zhuo Wen followed the purple passageway forward. When he reached the end of the passageway, he stopped and revealed a serious expression. At the end of the purple passageway was a small stone room. The stone room was filled with all kinds of torture tools used to bind people, and there was a corpse hanging in each of the torture tools. There wasn't just one corpse. There were dozens of them. They looked like pigs hanging in a slaughterhouse. From the silhouette of these corpses, one could tell that they were female. Their long hair draped over their sides. Zhuan walked to the nearest torture tool. The woman's hands were shackled and she was hanging in the air. She only wore thin linen clothes and her body was stained with blood. Zhuan gently lifted the woman's hair. His eyes focused because he found that this woman was no stranger. It was Honorable Tai Ching's disciple, Lian Meng. At this moment, Lian Meng's eyes were closed. She looked haggard and there was no breath left. She had clearly died. A trace of anger appeared in Zhuo Wen's eyes. He knew that this was all Honorable Tai Ching's doing. However, he didn't understand why Honorable Tai Ching would treat Lian Meng like this. After all, Lian Meng was Honorable Tai Ching's favorite disciple. Zhuo Wen walked in front of another woman and lifted her hair. His body stiffened, and his heart was moved. This was because this woman's appearance was actually the same as Lian Meng's. Zhuan lifted the hair of another woman and found that the dozens of female corpses in the room were all Lian Meng. Or rather, they looked exactly like Lian Meng. What is going on? Zhuan could not understand why the dozens of Lian Meng he saw were all Lian Meng. Every Lian Meng seemed to be carved from the same mold. Suddenly, the stone door at the end of the room opened and a beautiful figure walked out. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed because the beautiful figure was Lian Meng. At this moment, Lian Meng was full of immortal qi. She looked like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Her temperament was noble and unique. Lian Meng glanced at Zhuowen indifferently. Soon after, she walked over to the nearest torture tool and put it on herself. Chapter 2604. Body of Six Paths of Reincarnation. Zhuowen's gaze was gloomy. He arrived in front of Lian Meng, who had just died. After confirming that she was indeed dead, his heart sank even more. He knew that although this woman who had just come out looked exactly like Lian Meng, he knew that this was not the real Lian Meng. Tai Ching, are you inside? Why are you hiding? Zhuan walked to the door at the end of the stone room and shouted coldly. The stone door slowly opened. The purple mist inside seemed to have substance, giving people a hallucinatory feeling. Zhuan was vigilant, but he still stepped into the stone door. Behind the stone door was another stone room. However, this stone room was surrounded by purple mist, making it impossible to see what was inside. Vaguely, Zhuan could see a figure sitting cross-legged in front of the purple mist. Beside this figure, a beautiful figure was silently kneeling beside him, looking extremely respectful. Zhuowen strode forward, parting the layers of purple mist and arriving before the cross-legged figure. The figure that appeared in front of Zhuan was a sage-like old man in green clothes. At this moment, the old man in green clothes was sitting cross-legged on a green praying mat. His expression was peaceful and kind. Beside the old man in green clothes was a petite woman kneeling. This woman was Lian Meng. At this moment, Lian Meng's beautiful eyes were empty. She was muddle-headed, like a walking corpse. The old man in green clothes slowly opened his eyes and stared at the white-clothed youth in front of him. He smiled and said, "Yun, I didn't expect you to cultivate to such a level in just a few hundred years. Master is very gratified." Zhuan sneered and said, "Tai Ching, you and I are no longer master and disciple." The old man in green clothes did not mind and said indifferently, "You obtained the Zhurong Gu and the Pangu banner, right?" Zhuan frowned. He looked deeply at the old man and said, "How did you know?" Tai Ching smiled and said, "Because I can sense that you are from Huaxia on Earth. I think you know about the legend of Pangu and the relationship between the three pristines and Pangu, right?" Zhuan looked puzzled. "If it's really as you say, then you're too weak compared to Pangu." However, Tai Ching laughed out loud and said, "You really don't know anything. Pangu's physical body turned into the 12 ancestral shamans and his primordial spirit turned into the 3 pure ones. The 3 pure ones were formed from Pangu's primordial spirit and had no physical body." Zhuowen's eyes flashed with realization. He understood what Tai Ching meant. The 3 pure ones were only Pangu's primordial spirits and did not have a physical body. If he wanted to cultivate, he would have to rebuild his body and cultivate from scratch. Moreover, because the 3 pure ones were the primordial spirits of Pangu, their talents were definitely top-notch, and their cultivation speed was definitely very fast. If that was the case, it would also explain why Tai Ching's strength could only be ranked as the master of Huaxia's heavenly region. Moreover, the 3 pure ones' strength should be more than this. However, because we had some conflicts with the 12 ancestral shamans, we had a great battle. Until now, the 3 pure ones have not completely recovered. This is also the reason why I'm willing to curl up in the 8 heavenly regions, Tai Ching said calmly. "You should be the one who led me in through the stone statue, right? What's your purpose?" Zhuowen frowned. He knew very well that without Tai Ching's permission he, Zhuowen, would not be able to find the entrance to the statue in the Hall of Morals. Tai Ching's gaze became extremely solemn. He looked at Zhuowen and said in a deep voice, "The 12 ancestral shamans and the 3 pure ones originated from the same source. Pangu opened up the chaos and formed the starry sky today. But do you know that since Pangu fell, this starry sky has been returning to the chaos?" Zhuowen was startled and revealed a puzzled expression. He did not quite understand the so-called returning to the chaos. The so-called returning to the chaos is the return of the entire world to its original state. The essence of this starry sky is chaos, and chaos does not have any substance, only chaotic energy. In other words, our starry sky is heading towards decline. The moment the starry sky returns to the chaos, this starry sky will usher in an unprecedented explosion. Then, all life and matter in the starry sky will perish and turn into chaos, forming a new chaotic world. And the chaotic world is what the heaven that killed Pangu wants. Zhuowen nodded. He could tell that Tai Ching did not seem to be lying. He also knew that Tai Ching should have a purpose for saying this. In today's world, I'm afraid that only a powerful existence like Pangu can split the chaos apart. Even if there are still third-step Dao confirming experts guarding the starry sky and slowing down the chaos, only Pangu can split the chaos apart. Back then, the 3 pure ones negotiated with the 12 ancestors of sorcerers. We wanted to reach an agreement with them to recreate Pangu's divine might and split the chaos, but we failed and our relationship with the 12 ancestors of sorcerers became strained. So, the 3 pure ones represented the human race and the sorcerer race represented by the 12 ancestors of sorcerers broke off. In the end, the human race separated from the primitive heavenly domain and formed the Xianmi heavenly domain. The 3 pure ones were beaten back to our original form, leaving only the form of the nascent soul. Furthermore, the nascent soul was severely damaged. After saying that, Tai Ching silently looked at Zhuowen. He had already stated his purpose, and he knew that Zhuowen would definitely understand. Zhuowen lowered his head and pondered silently. Zhuowen had already heard about the enmity between the Xianmi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain from Bloodscale, But he did not know the specific details. Now that the Grand Pure One revealed everything, Zhuowen finally came to a realization. In that case, the three Pure Ones are the heroes of the Xianmi Heavenly Domain. Why are you hiding in the 8 heavenly domains? Zhuowen said coldly. Tai Ching sneered, you underestimate the greed and jealousy of the human race. The human race respects the 3 Pure Ones because of our power. When we lose the power to deter them, do you think we can still survive? Yun was silent. What Tai Ching said was not reasonable. Human nature was indeed the most complicated thing. It could quietly hurt you like a cold arrow. Furthermore, the nascent soul of the 3 Pure Ones has not fully recovered. Even if I return to the Xianmi Heavenly Domain, I will not make a big fuss. I will be careful. I am looking for you because I want to form a cooperative relationship with you. Although you only have an incomplete Zhurong venomous insect, you have the Panga banner. It is not impossible for you to collect other venomous insects in the future. If you can cultivate the Pangu sacred body, you may have a great chance of splitting the chaos. Grand Pure One said slowly. Why should I believe you? Also, what did you do to junior sister Lian Meng? Zhuowen looked at the girl kneeling beside Tai Ching and asked in an unfriendly tone. Tai Ching was not in a hurry. He looked at Zhuowen and said, when after Pangu fell, his nascent soul turned into the 3 Pure Ones, and his blood essence turned into the 12 ancestral sorcerers. However, you may not know that a small part of his blood essence turned into the 6 paths of reincarnation. I once told you that Lian Meng was born with an immortal body. However, that is not the case. She was born with the 6 paths of reincarnation. She can control the 6 paths of reincarnation and has a small part of Pangu's blood essence. The 8 heavens will soon become a land of trouble. Moreover, the naughty Shiva has successfully attained Tao. You'd better leave the 8 heavens as soon as possible. It's time for me to leave too. The Grand Pure One looked at Zhuowen with a smile. The surrounding purple fog gathered around the Grand Pure One. Then, Zhuowen discovered 2 other majestic figures in the purple fog on both sides of the Grand Pure One. Among the 2 figures, one of them was a rather sloppy old man. He was actually Yu Qing, who had gone to the heavenly armor planet with the Grand Pure One. At this moment, Yu Qing narrowed his eyes and grinned at Zhuowen. The 3 Pure Ones are even more amazing. The wonderful technique in the pot penetrates Mount Sumer. Move a piece of wood to revive me and send away the clone Mo Langi. The scattered immortal slayer has a shallow foundation and is completely selfless. You have to know that obedience is determined by the heavens. The disciples of Jie school are obsessed with themselves in vain. The Grand Pure One looked at Zhuowen deeply and recited a poem. Then, Zhuowen saw the Grand Pure One, Yu Qing, and Shangqing transform into 3 streams of clear qi with his own eyes. These 3 streams of clear qi merged into one and transformed into a long-bearded old man. This long-bearded old man was dressed in Taoist robes and sat on a candlestick seat. There was a bright halo behind his head, as if he had become a flying immortal. The 3 Pure Ones are one. I am the Grand Supreme Elder. Zhuowen, we'll meet again. I'll be waiting for you in the Xianmi Heavenly Region. If one day, when you're strong enough, I'll appear. The Grand Pure One's faint voice echoed in Zhuowen's ears, causing Zhuowen to be slightly absent-minded. When Zhuowen came back to his senses, he realized that the Grand Pure One had already disappeared. Lian Meng had also been taken away by the Grand Pure One. Zhuowen stood on the spot and was silent for a moment. Then he strode out of the place. He knew that the Grand Pure One had already left. Although he did not know what the Grand Pure One's ultimate goal was, he knew that as long as he became stronger, that old fox, the Grand Pure One, would naturally reveal his fox tail. At that time, a battle between him and the Grand Pure One would be inevitable. Zhuowen had a feeling that after he accepted the Panga banner, he seemed to be bound by the shackles of fate. However, Zhuowen was never one to submit to fate. If the shackles of fate wanted to bind him, then he would break through them with force. In the Hall of Virtue, countless cracks appeared on the surface of the Grand Pure One's statue before it finally collapsed. Zhuowen rushed out of a purple vortex and landed in the hall. Why did you follow me? Zhuowen stared at the figure at the front of the hall. At this moment, Myrtle Star's sovereign and Lan Ji were standing next to this figure, trembling with fear. The green-haired corpse raised his head and looked at Zhuowen with a complicated gaze. He said indifferently, "I can feel the aura of the Pangu origin spirit. This has nothing to do with you. You've already left the ominous vein and are free. There's no need for you to follow me." Zhuowen said coldly. The green-haired mummy crossed his arms in front of his chest, leaned against the red lacquer pillar behind him, and said, "I'm not familiar with this place. Since you're familiar with the starry sky of this era, I'll reluctantly let you be my guide." With that, the green-haired corpse sighed as if Zhuowen had taken advantage of him. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He said coldly, "Sorry, I'm not interested in being your guide. I don't care where you want to go, but don't even think about following me. It's your honor to be my guide." "It's decided," the green-haired corpse mumbled. Zhuowen's face darkened. He took a deep breath and said, "If you tell me where you came from, what's wrong with me bringing you along?" The green-haired corpse's eyes narrowed dangerously. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You want to know where I came from?" Zhuowen calmly met the corpse's gaze and didn't say anything. Chapter 2606. Purple Star Sovereign's decision. Zhuowen no longer paid any attention to the green-haired corpse. He knew that whether this guy had really lost his memory or not, it would not tell him his origin, so he simply stopped asking. If the green-haired corpse wanted to follow him, he did not mind. He could feel that since the Panga banner entered his divine soul, the green-haired corpse had no hostility towards him. Although he did not know the reason, he knew that the green-haired corpse was not a big threat to him at present. "Lan Ji, the resources in this spirit ring are enough for you to cultivate to the peak of the 8 steps void sky. Take it. This is your reward for following me around." Zhuowen took out a spirit ring and threw it to Lan Ji. The latter caught the spirit ring with great joy and bowed to Zhuowen. Especially after seeing the rich resources in the spirit ring, Lan Ji could not stop smiling. He was glad that he had chosen the right master. "Brother Purple Star and I are leaving the Tian domain of China. You don't have to follow us. Let's part ways here." Zhuowen's next words made Lan Ji's body stiffen. He wanted to speak, but after seeing the indifference in Zhuowen's eyes, his heart trembled. He could only sigh and nod. Lan Ji stood on a peak of the Hall of Virtue, watching Zhuowen and Purple Star Sovereign turn into streams of light and disappear into the horizon. He felt a sense of loss in his heart. He thought he had found a powerful backer this time, but he did not expect to be sent away so quickly. Fortunately, Zhuowen was not a stingy person. At least, the spirit ring Zhuowen gave him made Lan Ji very satisfied. "Brother Zhuowen, are you really going to take this guy with you?" On the space-time roulette, Purple Star Sovereign was sitting not far from Zhuowen. He looked at the green-haired corpse sitting on the other side and asked in surprise, "Brother Purple Star Sovereign, don't worry. He has no hostility towards us now. Moreover, I have something on me that makes him extremely wary. He won't dare to act recklessly," Zhuowen said. Crepe Myrtle Star nodded, but he sized up Zhuowen with a hesitant expression. "Brother Ziwei, if you have anything to say, just tell me." Crepe Myrtle Star hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Brother Zhuo, to tell you the truth, have you already obtained the cultivation method after the 3 extremities?" Zhuowen was startled. He fell silent for a moment before nodding. Crepe Myrtle Star King looked happy, but he also felt embarrassed. Although he wanted the cultivation method, it was Zhuowen who had obtained it. It wasn't his, so he didn't want to ask Zhuowen for it. "Brother Ziwei, I won't hide the cultivation method of the 3 extremities from you. Su Liang is right. If you want to continue cultivating the 3 extremes, you have to learn the shaman tribe's cultivation method and plant goo in yourself. However, this method has a very high failure rate even for the shaman tribe, not to mention the human tribe. The result of failure is death. Do you still want to cultivate?" Zhuowen looked at Crepe Myrtle Star King and said seriously. Zhuowen had obtained the cultivation method of the Pangu sacred body, so he had to use the goo of the ancestor. Naturally, he couldn't give it to Crepe Myrtle Star King. However, in the secret book of the shaman tribe provided by Su Liang, the Pangu sacred body was only one of the most powerful cultivation methods, and also the most dangerous one. Zhuan could try it because he had the Panga banner. However, if it was someone else, they would definitely die. Apart from that, there was the cultivation method of the ordinary shaman tribe. Through the ordinary gu, they could plant it in their body and walk on the cultivation method of the shaman tribe. Yuan didn't have the ordinary gu of the shaman tribe, but he had the gu of Zhurong. It was the gu of the ancestor of all gu. It wasn't difficult to produce a top-grade gu with a drop of the Zhurong gu's spirit blood. Moreover, the gu produced from the Zhurong gu's spirit blood would be much more powerful than the ordinary gu, and had much more potential. If Crepe Myrtle Star King really wanted to continue cultivating, Yuan could use this method. Crepe Myrtle Star King said without hesitation, "I've decided to continue cultivating, even if there is a risk of death. I need more power. Otherwise, the years to come will be too boring." Zhuan looked at the determination in Crepe Myrtle Star King's eyes and nodded. "If you decide to continue cultivating, then I'll help you. I've already recorded the cultivation method of this secret book. Take it first." With that, Zhuan took out a jade slip and handed it to Crepe Myrtle Star King. "What you lack now is a gu. I'll help you solve the problem of the gu. I'll be in seclusion for a while. When I come out, I'll bring you the gu you need." As Zhuan spoke, he summoned Xiaohe. After instructing this guy to control the space-time roulette and leave Huaxia Heavenly Domain for Dafan Heavenly Domain, Zhuan began his seclusion. After setting up a temporary cave residence in the space-time roulette, Zhuan sat leisurely inside and took out 2 fiery red balls. These 2 fiery red balls each had half of the gu of Zhurong. Moreover, they were constantly squirming, as if they had sensed the other half of themselves. They were extremely restless. Zhuan's eyes revealed a serious expression. He put the 2 balls together. Suddenly, a terrifying flame burst out, and then a sharp whistling sound pierced through the sky. Soon after, Zhuan saw the 2 halves of the Zhurong venomous insect fuse together and become a complete venomous insect. After the gu of Zhurong was complete, it immediately rushed toward Zhuan, making a sharp whistling sound. The whistling sound was full of hostility. Zhuan's eyes narrowed. He did not expect that the gu of Zhurong would betray him after combining. However, when the gu of Zhurong was a few feet away from Zhuan, it seemed to feel an extremely fearful aura. It screamed and turned a corner, wanting to leave this place. "Want to leave? No way." Zhuan's gaze was sharp, and his right hand suddenly made a grabbing motion, directly grabbing the fleeing Zhurong worm in his hand. Then he immediately activated the Pangu's sacred body, wanting to refine the gu of Zhurong immediately. At this moment, the gu of Zhurong was constantly screaming, and its whistling was full of fear. Zhuan knew that the gu of Zhurong should be afraid of the Panga banner in his divine soul. Because of fear, the gu of Zhurong did not even dare to fight back. It could only let Zhuan activate the Pangu's sacred body to refine the entire gu of Zhurong. Zhuan created an avatar of King Devourer. The power of the 3 extremes was like a sky-burning fire. It rolled over and wrapped the gu of Zhurong. Moreover, the secret codex of the sorcerer tribe gushed out of Zhuan's body. Strange runes rushed out of the codex. These runes rushed into the gu of Zhurong. Every time a rune entered, the gu of Zhurong would scream miserably. Its voice was full of anger, but it was afraid of the aura of the Panga banner, so it did not dare to act rashly. Countless runes turned into a black cocoon the size of a thumb. This black cocoon was completely formed by dense and strange runes. Because the runes were so dense, it really looked like a cocoon if one did not look carefully. Chapter 2607. Gu Fusion. The first step of cultivating the Pangu sacred body is to fuse with the gu. As long as I can completely fuse with the gu of Zhurong, I will be qualified to cultivate the Pangu sacred body. The process of fusing with the gu was extremely painful. Zhuan had already learned about it from the secret manual. This was also something that all sorcerer tribe members had to go through to prove their Tao. If they couldn't endure it, they would die. Only by enduring it could they embark on the path of the strong. When the black cocoon swept into Zhuan's glabella, Zhuowen immediately groaned in pain. His whole body twitched and his veins burst. He looked extremely ferocious. This kind of pain was like someone crushing your bones one by one until all the bones in your body were crushed. This kind of pain was thousands of times more painful. Even though Zhuowen's willpower was as strong as iron, he still wanted to commit suicide because of this terrible pain. Fortunately, Zhuowen had set up many large formations in this temporary cave residence, including a soundproof formation. Therefore, Zhuowen's shrill scream was not heard by the others on the space-time roulette. However, the green-haired mummy, who was sitting cross-legged not far away, slowly opened his eyes. He glanced at the temporary cave residence that Zhuowen had set up, and his eyes were filled with doubt and solemnity. The moment the black cocoon fused with Zhuowen's glabella, countless black runes drilled out of his glabella like worms. They crawled all over Zhuowen's body and covered his entire body. Soon, Zhuowen's entire body turned into a giant black cocoon. As countless runes surrounded him, the black of these runes was gradually replaced by a fiery red color. It was as if a force was awakening. Zhuowen's original body stood not far away and silently looked at his doppelganger. The muscles on his face were constantly twitching. After all, his original body and doppelganger were connected. Therefore, his original body also felt part of the pain that his doppelganger was experiencing. Although only a small part of the pain was transmitted, his original body was still a little crazy. This showed how terrible the pain his doppelganger was experiencing this time. "I hope we can make it through," Ji Hao murmured worriedly. He knew that if his clone couldn't make it, he would lose such a powerful clone, and he might not be able to control the Zhu Rong bug, which had gone out of control. Time ticked by. A month later, Crepe Myrtle's Star Lord and Xiao He looked worriedly at the cave abode that Zhuowen had set up. "Brother Zhu should be fine, right?" Crepe Myrtle's Star muttered to himself. "This kid is very lucky. He should be fine," Xiao He said in an uncertain tone. The green-haired mummy sneered in disdain, not saying a word. Rumble. Suddenly, Zhuowen's temporary abode collapsed with a bang, and then a white-clothed young man walked out slowly. Beside the white-clothed youth stood a black-clothed youth. The black-clothed youth looked exactly the same as the white-clothed youth, and his aura was more violent and horrible than before. In addition, there was a very small flame star between the eyebrows of the black-clothed youth. Although it was very small, it was vivid, as if a small flame was burning endlessly between the eyebrows of the youth. The green-haired mummy narrowed his eyes and looked at the black-clothed youth in surprise. In a voice that only he could hear, he murmured to himself, "This guy succeeded in fusing the bug, and it took him such a short time. Brother Crepe Myrtle, take this bug. If you really think it through, you can practice according to the practice method I gave you. I will protect you." Zhuowen pointed with his index finger, and a flame appeared at the tip of his finger. Upon closer inspection, there was a tiny goo worm wriggling within the flame. This bug was made from a drop of Zhurong's blood essence that Zhuowen took out. Among all the bugs, it was considered a very powerful bug of high quality. Crepe Myrtle's Star took out the flame excitedly and bowed deeply to Zhuowen. "Brother Zhuowen, I can't thank you enough. I will remember this favor." Zhuowen nodded, waved his sleeve, and set up a new cave on the spot. He said, "Brother Crepe Myrtle, you can practice in this cave for the rest of the time. It is very safe here." Crepe Myrtle's Star cupped his fists again and excitedly went into the cave. Obviously, he was going to refine the bug. "Xiao He, where are you now? Have you left the Huaxia heavenly region?" Zhuowen asked. Xiao He looked at the star map on the space-time roulette and said, "There is still half a month before we leave the Huaxia heavenly region. Because you are in seclusion, I did not go at full speed, so it will take a long time." Zhuowen nodded and did not intend to speed up. After all, Crepe Myrtle's Star was also in seclusion. If he went too fast, it would have a big impact on his seclusion. Zhuowen found a random place and sat cross-legged on the ground. He began to stabilize the Pangu sacred body of his clone. Zhuowen knew that he had not even reached the beginner level of the Pangu sacred body. He was only qualified to cultivate it. However, the effect of the Zhurong bug was too heaven-defying. Just by fusing the bug, Zhuan found that the strength of his clone had increased by a lot. In particular, the flame that his clone had now mastered was not an ordinary flame. It could burn anything and was extremely terrifying. In the past, the strength of his clone might only be a little stronger than that of the half-step Heavenly Path Master. But now, Zhuan was sure that the half-step Heavenly Path Master could be defeated with just one punch. Even if the real Heavenly Path Master appeared, Zhuan was confident that he could defeat him. Maybe it's time to look for Sakyamune. Zhuan thought of Sakura, and a trace of a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Back on the Heavenly Armor Planet, Sakyamune had played him and all the living beings on the Heavenly Armor Planet. Zhuan had never forgotten this hatred. Back then, Zhuan did not have the strength, so he could not do anything to Sakyamune. But now, Zhuan's strength was no longer afraid of the Heavenly Path Master. So what if the naughty Shiva successfully attained the Tao? Half a month later, the space-time roulette stopped. Zhuan opened his eyes and looked at Xiaohei. Xiaohei, what's wrong? Kid, the exit of the Huaxia Heavenly Territory has been blocked. And it looks like there's a lot of them. What's going on? Xiaohei asked. Zhuan stood up and looked ahead. Indeed, the exit of the Huaxia Heavenly Territory was guarded by many cultivators. These cultivators wore the same armor, and their gazes were solemn. They were even more strict with the cultivators passing by, as if they were looking for something. Just go ahead. If possible, Xiaohei, you can use force. After Zhuan finished speaking, he sat cross-legged on the deck again. He scanned the area with his divine sense and found that the strongest cultivator guarding the exit of the Huaxia Heavenly Territory was only Void Sky level 7. With this level of cultivation, even Xiaohei could kill him with one finger, let alone him. Zhuan had no interest in these cultivators. After all, they were not on the same level. When Xiaohei controlled the space-time roulette to land at the exit, 2 guards immediately came forward to search them. Get lost. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.